afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the February meeting of the Board of Early Education Care. I want to thank the team at Bentley Academy Innovation School and the Salem Early Childhood Complex for hosting us today. And I'd like to now welcome up Mayor Pangalo and Superintendent Zweig to welcome us to this beautiful facility and your beautiful city. Thank you for hosting us today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Secretary, Commissioner, members of the board. It's great to have you in Salem. Welcome to Bentley. Welcome to the Witch City. I know you have a fairly substantial and important agenda, so I don't want to take up too much time. Just want to say we're really grateful that you're here, the chance to welcome you back after your previous visit to showcase really the pre-K partnership that we have in Salem. We feel it's a really remarkable program. It provides a strong foundation in many respects for our kids as they're preparing to enter elementary school, for the people that are educators in our early childhood settings, and a strong foundation for the families that rely on the early child care that the services provide. So we're excited about CPPI and also to have you here and to talk a little bit more about the program that we offer here in Salem.
Yeah, I'd like to just echo the mayor. Welcome to Salem, the Salem Public Schools. You picked the wrong or right holiday, depending on how you look at it, to be in Salem.
No, the right one.
It's obviously not our banner holiday, but you're happy Valentine's Day. I do, and you got me out of my office, which is in the middle school, and where I saw all kinds of Valentines being tossed around. So I'm just grateful that you're here, so I'm not in my office. Valentine's Day with sixth graders. So I just want to say this is a community that long before my tenure here has believed in the impact and the power of early education. One of the reasons I came to Salem, having been in other communities, is I saw a school committee, a city, elected officials who really believed that that investing in our earliest learners would make the most impact and had the biggest chance of having game-changing results for our young people K to 12 and beyond. And so we're really proud to showcase our work here. We're proud to have you here. We're proud. We're really pleased that the state is making investments and thinking about making more investments, and that you're interested in thinking about how we can be innovative and how both the K-12 space and our private organizations, private partners, how we can a hybrid mixed delivery model can be impactful for a community. And we're just excited to have that conversation with you and to share a lot of the work that we've done here, which we're very proud of, and we do think is, all the investments we made with ESSER dollars, and this is, to us, the best investment we could have made, and we're already seeing that as proof points here in the city of Salem. So welcome to our community, and we look forward to being part of the conversation today. Thank you for including us.
Yeah, thank you again for hosting us. We look forward to learning more about the work that you're doing here in Salem in a little bit. And you just teed up the rest of this meeting in a really lovely fashion about kind of where we are today and where we're going as a sector. And so thank you very much for hosting us.
Thank you.
In addition to learning more about the CPPI grant today, we'll hear a little bit about the FY25 budget, as well as talk about the state notification process. And so with that, I will turn it over to the secretary.
Yep. Good afternoon, all, and thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Superintendent Zweig, as he walks out the door, for welcoming us here and hosting us here. We had a wonderful visit, actually, to this school and another partner provider back in November, and I really look forward to the presentation a little bit later on in the meeting. And also thank you to whoever has provided the lovely sweet treat that I see sort of here and there throughout the room. As the chair mentioned, on the agenda, we will discuss the FY25 budget, and I would normally use my time to sort of talk about what's in there. But since we're going to do a deep dive during the meeting, I will hold on that and instead turn to what I think you'll hear or see or experience around what we believe as is presented in that budget. We sort of came out of the gates really quickly in January of 23, really working hard to develop the budget that we're experiencing right now, the FY24 budget, and we have since had time to dedicate or lean into developing language around the beliefs that I'd like to share with you right now. This is language that illustrates our commitments, the lens through which we will evaluate challenges, and then the way that we work together as we contemplate that which lies ahead. We seek to, first and foremost, advance equity and inclusion because every student deserves an education system where we've eliminated barriers and the practices that further existing disparities. We will maintain a holistic perspective because every student deserves an education system that encompasses a broad array of factors that impact their learning and development, including but not limited to mental and physical well-being and their hierarchical needs. We will embrace collaboration because every student deserves an education system that values and embraces the perspective, experience, and expertise of the communities that it serves. We will champion innovation because every student deserves an education system that welcomes bold, new ideas, sources input from a broad constituency, and strives for excellence through innovation. And just as we bring our passion for student growth and learning to this work, we also bring the encouragement of one another as colleagues. We will strive to center fulfillment because every student deserves an education system powered by joy and resilience. Now, I'm a deep believer in core values, but they're only important if they are lived and acted upon. We spent a lot of time developing the language to communicate our commitment to doing just that. That is all from me, Chair.
No, thank you very much. And those are incredible grounding values, norms, and principles for us to think about this work in a holistic way. And so thank you for sharing that. And I'll turn it over to the Commissioner for some updates.
Sure. Easy to follow, Secretary. I just want to offer my gratitude and thanks also to the mayor and the superintendent and your team. We had an amazing visit here where we first really learned in depth. Our team has talked about the program in Salem for a long time, and we're thrilled to be back and be able to share it with all of our board members and also with our broader community as a real model of where we hope universally accessible early childhood education goes. So really looking forward to the full agenda today, sharing with you the governor's Gateway to Pre-K initiative and how that's supported through the governor's FY25 budget. Deep dive into our CPPI program, and I also want to thank the partner agencies who are going to be here presenting what that model looks like here in Salem, and then some administrative work around our child care and development funds and requirements for the federal government that we'll end our meeting with, and which will require board action later. I do have a couple updates for the board as well. Earlier this week, on Monday, I had the opportunity to participate in an announcement about new registered apprenticeship programs across the Commonwealth. The event happened at the Community Group's brand new training center in Lawrence, and I'll invite Maria to add anything she wants after, but this was an announcement by the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development. This board has taken a very strong position in leadership around building a pipeline of qualified early educators, and we had a working group that focused on innovative and new ways that we could do that, including new apprenticeship programs, not something that's really been done in the early childhood space. So on Monday, they announced $5 million for registered apprenticeship programs, 25 new programs, 5 of which are early education and care programs. The biggest growth among the apprenticeship programs is in the early education and care sector, really led by Maria Moeller and her work. I was saying at that meeting that in July of 2022, soon after starting as commissioner, I visited Maria's program, and she talked about this mentorship program that she had started that was bringing folks in the community into the program, providing mentoring. They could learn while they were earning. They were adding additional staff into the classrooms. They were professionalizing the workforce by supporting the mentors with additional funding, as well as providing funding for the staff working in the program. Cohorts were being trained on site and then going on to increase. And I said it to her at the time, how are we helping you with that? Oh, you're not. And so one of the things that was really, I said, well, if we're not helping her with that, what are we doing? And so, as I said, with the leadership of this board and many in the community, including Neighborhood Villages, who's been a real leader in registered apprenticeship programs, Monday really marked not just an excitement of $1 million for new early educators coming into the field, 275 educator seats in those apprenticeship programs, but really our pathway and commitment to professionalizing the early education and care field and bringing sort of the best of what the rest of state government has to offer into our space. So these are registered by the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development, funded by the Department of Labor. And over the last year and a half, our team, led by Jocelyn Bowen and Sarah Volkanot, have convened folks across the Commonwealth talking about apprenticeship and pipeline approaches and talking about the importance of creating a much more sort of standard, high test, high standard approach. And so it was really an honor to be able to participate in that and to be in your beautiful new space, Maria. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
I will just say that you give me too much credit. I mean, it was kind of sink or swim when this all happened. So I was surrounded by incredible, powerful brains at that point that care so much about the field. And, we didn't want to fail, obviously. We know how important early childhood education is. It also feels now, fast forward to now, it feels that this is a step towards the true professionalization of the field. And, our teachers and educators deserve this. And we were honored to have you there on Monday and to continue the work.
I had a chance to meet Luisana, who runs the training program for Maria and the community group, and she said they held their first orientation for the new apprenticeship program last week, and they had 50 new folks wanting to participate. So really excited to have shared that with you and to have been able to participate, and we look forward to all that that's going to lead to as well. Last week I had an opportunity to testify in front of the Joint Committee on Bonding Capital Expenditures and State Assets, which is not a place early childhood also usually goes. But that committee was hearing testimony on the governor's future tech bill, which is an IT bond bill to support IT infrastructure and support for the Commonwealth and for government agencies. And in that proposal is $12 million for new IT systems for the Department of Early Education and Care, specifically focused on the need for a brand new child care financial assistance system from end to end, from wait list to payment, from the experience of parents to bring the digital experience better to families to do business with us in the ways that they want to make it easier for providers, and really kind of modernize the way we do business. So I was honored to be able to testify in support of that bill, and we hope there will be support for that, and that we'll be able to move forward with that. I also wanted to report to the board that thanks to your support and vote at the last meeting, the Early Education and Out-of-School Time Capital Grant Program regulations, which you approved, have now been formally promulgated, filed with the Secretary of State and for promulgation. So we're excited to move forward, and we'll keep you updated on this year's grant rounds of our capital investments. I also wanted to update all of you. At last month's meeting, we walked through now what I will call an aspirational timeline for the reprocurement of our child care financial assistance contracts. As you will recall, those contracts have not been reprocured since 2009, and it is a big, complicated task, and we have an amazing team at EEC working on it. But we are going to push back our timeline just a little bit to accommodate some of the complications of that. So we are now, and we have heard from many of our providers who are anxiously awaiting that RFR, that if we could just tell them when we're going to post it, that they could do some planning. So we are aiming for early to mid-March. It will not be posted any later than March 15th, but it may be posted around the middle of March. We expect to be able to make award notifications by July 1st with new contracts starting in September. So that is the revised timeline for those who are planning, and we will continue to report back to the board. Also related to child care financial assistance, good news and reality news, I guess. So I'm very, very pleased to report that We are up at 58,000 for our caseload. That means we're serving 58,000 children and families within our child care financial assistance systems. About 36,000 in our income eligible program, and the rest in our families involved with the Department of Transitional Assistance and Department of Children and Families. And that is the amount we have appropriated for this year. Our goal this year was to serve 58,000 families, and thanks to our child care resource and referral agencies and our many providers across the Commonwealth, we have achieved that goal early. We had put in a number of COVID-era flexibilities to try and increase the caseload, and we are going to now have to put some controls back in place. We are not shutting down access, but we are working on making sure we can maintain that 58,000 level so that we can both stay within our appropriation and spend every penny we've been appropriated on the children for whom those dollars are intended to serve. So we will continue to report back, but very good news that we're at 58,000, and the agency will be working hard to try and put in some new tools to make sure that we can manage to both the appropriation and maintain that level. We hope very much that we will talk in a minute about the governor's proposal, which includes $75 million for new access for families in FY25. And so we hope with those funds and the support of the legislature, that next year our goal would be to reach 62,000 families. So we will continue to report on caseload, but we are serving the families we've been funded to serve, so that's good news. And I just want to thank our providers who've been with us, kind of enrolling families and doing outreach in our child care resource and referral agencies. We said, get as many families as you can in. We need to get up to that pre-pandemic caseload level, and now we have achieved that, which is terrific. Two personnel things I just want to finish with. One, I want to introduce Jasenia Burke. Jasenia, there you are. Jasenia joined us on Monday as EEC's very first diversity officer, and we are so grateful. She joins us most recently as the Director of Equity, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion from the Walpole Public Schools, and before that from the Foxborough Public Schools, where she was the METCO Director, and I think we overlapped in Brookline also while you were working there, but a career dedicated to centering equity in the experience of students, and so we are thrilled to have you at EEC, and I know Jasenia's portfolio will both be internally focused in terms of culture and sense of belonging, but it'll also be focused on our policies and regulations and our work with the board as we continue to center equity in everything we do. So welcome, Jasenia. We're so thrilled to have you. And now a less happy announcement, although happy for him. I just wanted to let the board know that Andrew Rome, our Deputy Commissioner for Field Operations, has let us know that he will be retiring on March 22nd. You will see him at the next board meeting, but I just wanted to take it, and we'll have lots more time to say many things about Andrew, but Andrew's held some of the hardest jobs in state government, including the one he has right now, and I don't think there's any way we would have achieved nearly what we have in the last year and a half if Andrew hadn't been watching our field operations shop, which is overseeing all of the licensing and all of our residential programs and supporting our regional offices. And many of you may know, prior to working at EEC, he was the general counsel at Department of Children and Families. So he has earned this retirement. Personally, I had a chance to work with Andrew when I was at the Department of Children and Families, and now again at EEC, and it has been a great honor and great fortune for me to have the opportunity to work again with Andrew. So we are sad to be losing Andrew in this role. Happy for you to have achieved this milestone and for your next chapter, Andrew, but want to thank you for your service, and we'll have a chance at the next meeting too. Those are my extended updates.
There's a lot of good stuff right there, and I kept thinking about everything that you were talking about and updating on, and I just kept going back to centering the providers, children and families, and all the work that we're doing, as well as trying to figure out how to manage the momentum of all the good things that are happening as it relates to kind of living within the appropriation and the means that we have to serve children and families, and so that was a big update. Yeah. So thank you for that. Yeah.
So because we've hit the caseload, does that mean that new families won't, that we won't be able to provide more subsidies for families at this point until the new fiscal year, or what does that mean for families?
So
on the
we do
waiting
have
list?
natural attrition in the system, so
Yeah.
families leave, move out of state. They may lose eligibility because their income increases beyond our current eligibility. So we will be working to maintain within the turnover in the system. So it won't be, we will not be shutting down access. It will be trying to maintain that 58,000 by understanding kind of what the turnover is and making sure that we're pulling in families at the same pace that they're going out. We do have policies in place, just so you know, that make sure both the Department of Children and Families, where we don't have a cap, that those families will continue to get served on demand and with immediate access. And we also have continuity of care policies, which ensure that families who have siblings that are already receiving child care financial assistance are able to enroll their children. So, and children who are aging up that are in our contracted slots will continue to have eligibility. So continuing to try and center making sure that families' care is not disrupted. It will slow down the growth of the caseload because we were at a pandemic low of about 47, almost 48,000, and so we've been growing the caseload as quickly as we can to try and make sure that we're up to the appropriation. So now we'll be at more of a sort of maintenance level rather than a growth
Thanks.
until new funds have been appropriated, hopefully in support of the governor's investment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before we move to this public portion and comment portion of the meeting, I do want to recognize Representative Manny Cruz, who is with us today. Representative, thank you for hosting us in your district today. We are excited to learn about the incredible work happening here in Salem, and grateful for your attendance here today and for welcoming us. So, welcome. Moving to the public comment portion of the meeting, I'd like to call up Jillian Budine to join us at the table. As Jillian comes up, I do want to acknowledge that the board's received public comment by email and it's been distributed to the board prior to the start of the meeting. I also want to acknowledge this is the second year in a row that we've had a board meeting on Valentine's Day, which just loads us with sugar, which is awesome. But I know Jillian has brought us a little gift in spirit of Valentine's Day today as well. So welcome,
Thank you.
Jillian. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So the little gift and the little treat that I did bring today is a little box of conversation hearts. And on the back, it says, let's have a conversation about the power of CFCEs. So, and that's sort of what my public comment is about today. And first, I have to acknowledge Secretary Tutwiler. I am so sorry. I forgot to change and update my secretary name on my letter. I apologize. But today, good afternoon, EEC board members, Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Kershaw, Chair Belcito. My name is Gillian Bedine. I'm here today to represent the families in our communities of Irving, Leverett, New Salem, Shutesbury, and Wendell. So I drove out from the western part of the state, not as far as you can go by any means, but to visit with you today. Our towns are very small, very rural. We range from about 924 residents to about 1,900 residents in our 5 given towns. I'm the coordinator for our EEC-funded Coordinated Family and Community Engagement Grant Program through the Union 28 schools. We have named our program the Community Network for Children Program. Today, I would like to invite you, board members and Commissioner Kershaw, to join me and other fellow CFC program coordinators in a conversation about the role of the CFC grant-funded programs and the families with the youngest children in the Commonwealth that interact with our programs. The CFC-funded program addresses the developmental, social, and emotional and community support needs of young children and their families to foster healthy development, reduce caregiver isolation, and promote early learning success. CFCE programs are a crucial hub of support and resources for families, especially in our small rural communities, when there are not many agencies or programs that exist within our towns. With limited access to programs, many families with infants and toddlers at home rely on CFCE programs to provide enrichment, socialization, and opportunities to reduce isolation through trusted relationships with CFC program staff. CFC programs are the local and trusted web of support, help accessing care, builders of relationships, and partners that can support EEC with family engagement, connecting families to resources, and supporting families with transitioning to early education and care and school. As we strive to maintain and build capacity within our communities to engage and support families, we recognize that we can no longer do so without additional financial support. The CFCE grant has been reduced or level funded for the last 10 years. We would like to have a conversation about increasing the financial support through EEC to ensure that the web that supports and engages our families, our programs and partners in our community can continue to be a strong and resilient EEC-funded program. Please let me know how we can join together in this conversation. And as I conclude my testimony, I'd like to share a few recent comments from families participating in our programs. When my kids were first born, CNC was pivotal in building community and finding resources. As they are older, we appreciate the events CNC puts on, like the Children's Closet. CNC makes it feel like the community really cares about families. Playgroups are an important part of my child's development. The routine they provide in our child's life is also important. The social and emotional aspect is crucial in my toddler's growth. And lastly, the programs and staff have been an invaluable support to me and my family throughout the year. The consistency and variety of programming is crucial to my children's social and early development with peers. Having an outlet to meet and talk to other families with similar-aged children is also an incredible opportunity. As a stay-at-home mom, daily life with children on your own can feel isolating, but these programs allow for a sense of support and camaraderie as parents, as well as new learning for both my children and myself of activities we can do at home to help encourage appropriate development of early childhood skills. Thank you for supporting these programs and the amazing staff that run them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian, and thank you for your commitment to even be here today. I know it's probably quite a ride for you, hopefully on a beautiful winter day, but I appreciate you being here today and adding your
Thank
voice.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And for the treats.
You're welcome.
I'd like to now invite up Natalie Hernandez and her colleagues Donna, Tiffany, and Jennifer to join us at the table.
Good afternoon. I'm Natalia Hernandez. I'm representing the CFC of the North Shore. I'm here with Donna Connolly, the director of the program, and Tiffany and Jennifer, who are program facilitators. The CFC of North Shore has been serving 9 communities. We see a great number of families weekly. We host right now approximately 35 programs weekly, 500 plus families that we see. We are in Peabody, and I have the name of all the cities and towns, just in case I forget one of them. So we are in Peabody, Beverly, Boxford, Danvers, Marblehead, Middleton, Salem, Swampscott, and Topsfield. The number of families that we've been serving right now are great, but it's not near the number of families that we could be serving if more funding was provided. We are very thankful for the emergency assistance funding that we are getting, and the PC Plus expansion funding that was also recently approved. That will definitely allow us to reach out to more families and serving more. We are in 2 shelters right now, one in Salem, one in Peabody, and we hope to be in 2 other shelters very soon. Very soon. But definitely, like Gillian said, I would like to follow her, that yes, more funding would allow us to serve way more families. We know that the families are out there. We know there's a need, and we would like to be able to reach out. The CPPI is the board that we are joining, and we are very happy. City of Salem, thank you so much for inviting us. We are going to be joining them. And what else do I have here? I didn't stay in track, but I think that's pretty much what I have here. I don't know if Donna would like to add anything else. But thank you for these expansion grants that we are getting, and we hope to be working with more and more families, not only here in Salem, but in all of the other cities that we are providing services right now. Good. You want to add anything?
Oh, yeah, good. Thank you all for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we have Amy O'Leary from Strategies for Children.
Good afternoon, Chair Belcito, members of the board, Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Kershaw, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Amy O'Leary, and I'm the Executive Director at Strategies for Children. And after 10 years as a preschool teacher and director at Ellis Early Learning, I started my work at Strategies in June of 2002 when we launched the Early Education for All campaign. The campaign goal was to make high-quality early childhood education available to all Massachusetts children from ages 3 through 5. Nationally, this was a time when states were beginning to recognize the importance of pre-K and starting to plan expansion in a variety of different ways. Massachusetts has always chosen a route that prioritized the mixed delivery system, parent choice, and providing supports for programs to be high quality, all in the name of ensuring positive outcomes for children. Other cities and states have not necessarily taken this route. Over the past 2 decades, we have seen many iterations of preschool expansion in the Commonwealth. There have been many different acronyms, different funding sources, different program models, but the one thing they all have had in common has been a community effort coming together to best serve children and families. In 2002, we worked with the legislature to file a bill that called for universal pre-kindergarten in Massachusetts, and after a few attempts, it was ultimately passed unanimously by the legislature and signed by Governor Patrick in 2008, subject to appropriation. At the local level, our team at Strategies for Children has collaborated with many of the communities over the years, including Salem, as they came together to establish new relationships, form leadership teams, develop plans, collect data, and do the research and design a program to expand preschool opportunities. We've created technical assistance resources, research briefs, and our classic 10 things we've learned about preschool expansion fact sheet. All this to say, the history around preschool in Massachusetts has been long and complex. One thing I have learned over the past 2 decades is that the letters UPK and the phrase pre-K bring on a strong mental model that can mean many different things to many different people in our communities and in the public. These mental models are based in a history where sometimes investments were prioritized for one part of the system over the other, to the detriment of local early childhood programs. The governor's announcement is exciting and also brings up some long-standing anxieties for programs. We have had many questions on the 9:30 call in the morning and at the 9:30 call at night about what this proposal could mean to me. Today, we'd like to encourage the early childhood community to imagine a future where communities seek out opportunities for partnership and focus on the collaboration and strengthening the current local system while not causing it harm or creating additional barriers. As we move forward together, we want to ensure that all programs are at the table, seen and treated as equals in these partnerships, and recognizes for the value that they bring to the landscape. We look forward to hearing more about CPPI today. One of the strengths of this program is that the implementation looks different in every community. The Salem partnership is one of the many incredible examples. I wanted to be here today to share some love and thank Governor Healy and the members of her administration for the incredible budget proposal for early education and care in fiscal year 25. We are working on a sign-on letter to share our thanks that we have shared with our community. In only 24 hours, we have had close to 250 people sign on. The plan to expand preschool access to the CPPI underscores the state's commitment to fostering early learning environments across the mixed delivery system. Your investment in these programs recognizes the vital role of family child care, center-based, and school districts play in the delivery of preschool. CPPI creates opportunities to build coordination across these many settings. By fostering local partnerships and encouraging collaboration, we can create inclusive, equitable early childhood experiences for children in the Commonwealth. We can figure this out together. We believe that starting this process in the community level is essential to the success of preschool expansion, and we stand ready to help in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Is there anyone else here for public comment that may not have signed in? Good, great. Just one piece of routine business. We have before us the minutes of the January 10th, 2024 board meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or edits from the board? Hearing none, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes of the January 10th, 2024 board meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second, Carolyn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Great. The minutes of the January 10th, 2024 board meeting are approved. And with that, I will turn it over to the commissioner.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to invite Catherine Harvell up. And I am going to, you have read about this, you have gotten some emails from us, so we're going to do a quick review. I think it's really important that make sure we have an opportunity for the board to discuss the elements of the governor's Gateway to Pre-K initiative, so we're going to run through those and then also provide a little bit of detail about some of the other exciting initiatives that are in the budget, as well as how the FY25 budget at EEC supports those initiatives. And Secretary, I will invite you to interrupt and supplement
Sure.
at any point during the presentation. Okay. So thank you for those of you who are able to join us. We were at the YMCA in Malden, joined by the governor, the secretary, the lieutenant governor, as well as many legislators and school committee members and mayors. And like Salem, Malden showed up for early education and care that day. We were also joined by Minority Whip Catherine Clark, so working closely with our federal partners. So we had an opportunity to tour the program, and then the governor announced her Gateway to Pre-K initiative, which has 4 key, very important elements that I will refer to the appendix for a second in the board deck, which is your budget recommendations that you worked on in the fall that we, on your behalf, conveyed to the secretary and up to the governor's office. And I think you will see deep alignment among the work that the board did to identify the priorities that we needed to continue to move our systems change forward. And in the sort of charge that was given to us by the secretary, stabilize, heal, transform, and to continue that work. So in Malden, and then again in her State of the Commonwealth address, which started with some preschoolers from the East Boston Social Centers delivering the Pledge of Allegiance. If you didn't have a chance to see that part, we'd be happy to share that with you. The governor also highlighted her sort of 4-part agenda, and then again, it's supported in the budget. So it includes 4 key parts: delivering universally accessible, high-quality preschool for all 4-year-olds in our gateway cities by the end of 2026. So starting this year and moving into 2026. And we are intending over the next several months to dive deeper into each one of these pieces. And today we're going to have an opportunity to talk about CPPI, as you've heard today, which is the mechanism that we are proposing be our path to universally accessible preschool. The governor also announced a policy shift that we believe is really important, which is increasing the eligibility level for child care financial assistance from the current 50% of state median income up to 85%, which really represents the needs of the community in terms of families, the expense level of childcare, housing, and of living in Massachusetts, and the importance of reaching families at higher income levels. She also announced, as I mentioned, $75 million, which will allow us to serve 4,000 more families in the coming year, should that be supported by the legislature. She also announced a continuation of the Commonwealth Cares for Children at $475 million, which we see as critical, foundational to the stability and health of our field. As you all saw at last month's meeting, that program has continued to meet its goals of stabilizing and now really helping to expand and grow our field. So not only are we seeing an increase in the capacity in our early education and care system, but we're seeing increases in salary, increases in compensation, and increases in quality investments in programs as well. And as we visit programs, we also hear about the essential role it's playing in making sure all of those investments can happen without the cost being passed along to families, which has been really essential also at this time. So. And then the 4th part, the governor on Martin Luther King Day signed an executive order, which is about taking a whole government approach to early education and care. So it brings together Secretary of Education with the Secretaries of Economic Development, Housing and Livable Communities, Labor and Workforce Development, along with our other secretaries of Health and Human Services, to work in partnership around how we make all of government work on behalf of early education and care. And I think Monday's apprenticeship announcement was a terrific example of government doing, each of us doing the part we do. We don't have to run the apprenticeship programs because there is a system that does that. but we can help make sure that they know how to do it in a way that takes into account the needs of early education and care programs. So this is a charge across secretariats to make sure that as we're thinking about housing and economic development and labor and workforce development and working with employers, that early education and childcare as a key infrastructure for the state's economy is considered in everything that we're doing. So as the governor said, it's a linchpin to our economy, and it was really the second thing she highlighted behind transportation as a critical as a critical investment for making our communities competitive and affordable for the families who live, learn, and work here. So we're pretty excited about that executive order. I'm going to be working really closely with the Executive Office of Education to staff that. We have already been out. Secretary Tutwiler, Secretary Howe from Economic Development, and Secretary Jones from Labor and Workforce Development. We've been on several visits already at early education and care programs, so I think we're already spending a lot more time together. Secretary, is there anything else you'd like to say about this part of the?
I listened intently, looking for something more to add. You did a beautiful job. No, I have nothing more to add. But we are, other than to say that we are really excited about this, I think there's excitement across the secretariats, the cabinet, about this. Folks are ready to lean in, and so we're ready to go.
Great,
Really
thank you.
excited about it.
I'll turn back to you when we get to talk about literacy in a minute.
Sure.
So we wanted to just highlight a few of the areas where the Gateway to Pre-K is actually reflected in the budget. So Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you for a second to talk a little bit about the budget and where we see these investments falling.
Yep, absolutely. The commissioner took all the fun stuff and left me to the boring numbers, but I'm used to that as my job. So thank you for.
Is that what we agreed?
It is, I know we agreed to it. I know we did. I'm also used to it. And I'm not just wearing black because of my black heart. It's because I'm Irish and red doesn't look good on me. No, but I am really excited. As I think most of you know, I've been at EEC for about 3 months now. I was not as heavily involved in building this budget as everyone else in this room. I was, at the time, building the HHS budget. So I feel really privileged to be able to talk about what incredible things this budget is going to do for the children of the Commonwealth. And now I'm going to cry, but I won't. So the Gateway to Pre-K is such a nice concept to break out the budget investments by. I'm kind of used to talking about line items, but I love that I can talk about children and the things that we're doing for them. So at the beginning, as the commissioner mentioned, there's $38.7 million for the CPPI initiative. And it's split up between a couple of funding sources. There's $15 million that we're going to use to focus on just high-quality preschool in the gateway cities. The fair share line item also adds an additional amount of $21 million and $17.7 million, which I think part of the complication of our budget and why the commissioners asked me to come up here is if you do just look at the budget website, it's not obvious. All the numbers don't necessarily add up. Like, you could look at this slide and believe it is true, but if you're trying to add up the line items, it's not as easy because we are so fortunate and so lucky to have access to the fair share resource, and those are funded through different line items. So that's where it if you look at just the specific things, you can get a little lost. So in addition, there's $75 million that's only in fair share. So that one is pretty clear and pretty drawn out for the access for additional families. That is the 4,000 children that the commissioner just spoke of, and that's in a special fair share line item. The $475 million for Commonwealth Cares for Children, the C3, that is split between general fund, high quality trust, so that's one appropriation, and then the fair share. So you have to kind of add those up, but it does add up to the 475. So we are continuing that 475 commitment that the administration has made in the past for the kids.
Great, thanks. And I'll have you come back in when we get to the actual line items. But it is an unusual budget, and we because we have access to the fair share funding for early education, And this administration has been really committed to doing that. It's a very unusual budget because the sources and the line items don't add up in sort of a typical way. So we would typically have brought you sort of, here's what it looked like last year and here's what it looked like this year. But there was it was very difficult to do an apples to apples comparison. But the good news is multiple funding sources coming together to support these investments. And again, I think I guess the other thing I would just mention is that consistent with the board's guidance and direction in budget development and priorities from last fall, the governor's Gateway to Pre-K initiative continues to move the system forward in multiple ways. It's not about pressing any one lever, but making sure we're supporting programs with the stability and financial health and the ability to invest in their staff through our C3 program, increasing the purchasing power of families, including the budget includes another $20 million for a rate increase, which will allow us to continue the journey we're on around rate reforms, in addition to the $75 million to serve new families. And it also continues to support workforce and other parts of the initiative. So, Secretary, would you like to highlight our literacy launch initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually think it pairs really well with the Gateway to Pre-K investment. So the governor, this was just last week, we did an event in Randolph at, was the Young Elementary School, yes. Highlighting what we're calling literacy launch from age 3 to grade 3. And this is a $30 million investment in the first year of a multi-year effort to address the literacy strategies in Massachusetts. And really the idea is to get the entire state in the same place as it relates to evidence-based literacy strategies. And when I say age 3 to grade 3, we do mean that, and that is really focused on high-quality instructional materials, the purchase of those materials. It's also focused on professional development. There's a piece of it that also involves aligning teacher prep programs with those strategies. So we're really, really excited to take that first step. This is really at the state's first investment in this space. It's a significant one. I purposely said it's the first of a multi-year initiative. We don't think that we're going to get there, obviously, in 1 year, but that $30 million in the first year is definitely signaling that we are serious about getting this right.
Great, thank you. So we are not going to go through line item by line item, but this is what the line item budgets look like. And I'll just say, and then Catherine, if there's anything else we need to add, that in addition to the highlights we included that allow us to advance in some of our important transformative and system building efforts, core funding is available for many of our other ongoing programs, including our CFCEs, who you heard from today, our Career Pathways program, and many of our other initiatives that provide sort of ongoing core services within our budget. So these are the detailed line items. Again, we have consolidated some of them so that like goes with like in terms of the budgets.
Yeah, they're the detailed categories. We broke out the 20 million for the rate increase. That is, you see that in the 65 million of the fair share line item. And then the additional 20 is split between the two caseload accounts to account for the annualization of the 65. This is a very complicated budget because we are so lucky to have fair share, so lucky. But if anybody has any questions or want to find something, please reach out because it's not as easy as some budgets, and that's okay.
We'll take complicated
Yes,
and
yeah.
3.4% increase over our biggest budget ever any day.
Well, we absolutely will, yes.
Yeah. And I think we probably should just mention that the funding level for child care financial assistance also does include annualizing the full 65 million in rate increases from this year that I think went into effect for our center-based programs on February 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Retro to July 1st. But
Retro
yeah, yes.
to July 1st. And pending contract negotiations with the union representing our family child care providers, those increases will also go into effect retro to July 1. So,
Thank you.
any questions?
Any questions?
How could we help make, this is incredible, right? Like, as a field representative, I kind of want to do cartwheels here, but how can we make sure that this becomes, how can we help this become a reality? Like is there,
Yeah, it's a great question, and the way I'm going to answer it is just to ask Catherine to walk through the steps in the budget process. So
Okay.
the governor's budget represents the first formal step as a proposal in this second year of the legislative session called House 2, her budget. So Catherine, what comes next in the legislative process for the budget?
What comes next, as I'm sure you all remember from 5th grade civics, is any appropriation.
Not.
Okay, well.
You live this.
I love,
So
clearly
just-
that's why I have this job.
Yes,
I
we
love
do
that
not.
class. Any appropriations bill has to start in the House. So House Ways and Means will release their version of the budget. We're in active conversations with them so that they can understand the real details behind the governor's budget. They will release their budget in April. It's usually the week before school vacation week. And there will be a whole week-long process where they are voting on amendments. So once you can obviously talk to your representatives. Once House Ways and Means is released, the second process of supporting amendments that members would file, that's also, up to the public and advocates. Once the House budget comes out, the Senate takes what they've done and what the governor does and makes their own Senate Ways and Means budget in May, that they will then go through the same amendment process. And then anywhere from the end of May to, it's gone as late as December, but that won't be this year, they will conference on the differences of the budget. So you have a lot of opportunity with your representatives, with their individual budgets in the two chambers, but then also when conference comes out, or when they are working on conference, if there are big distinctions between the two, that's where they are looking to hear from their constituents.
So, obviously the budget started back with the agency and with the board in our discussions, but the first formal step is the governor filing her House 2 proposal. So the House will take it up next, and then the Senate, and then there'll be a conference committee, and those are certainly opportunities for constituents to weigh in along the route.
So step 1 of 4.
We are on step 1 of 4, but for us as the administration, it's a really big step.
Yeah, no, it's the starting point,
It
but
is.
I do
And
think it's important to
strong
know it's
start.
one. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I have
No,
one
sorry,
more.
Please.
Just, I have to say, in the spirit of equity,
Yes.
There seems to be some wiggle room with regards. I am representing a gateway community. Obviously, we do have a CPPI program in the gateway community, but increasing or having CPPI access non-gateway communities, is there like a wiggle room on that with the funding, or are we thinking about that?
So we will be prioritizing gateway cities. Obviously, communities have self-determination about whether they would like to apply, whether they would like an expansion grant, whether they would like a planning. When we get to the CPPI, you're more familiar with it, Maria, I think, because you guys are a CPPI community, but it has sort of a planning phase, an implementation phase, and now an expansion phase, which we're pretty excited about. And so we will make it available. We will prioritize our gateway cities because the governor's goal is really to reach universal accessibility within those gateway cities by the end of 2026. We have many communities, and you'll see it when we get to CPPI, who are participating in CPPI now, who are not actually gateway cities. Nothing will happen to, we will continue to work with those communities and continue to support their efforts as well. So, the long-term goal is to reach every community, and obviously starting with our gateway communities where we would, where income levels and economic opportunity and educational levels are lower than the state average. It's a good place for us to start in terms of the match between the benefits of early childhood education and what we want to achieve for our children. So, but the commitment is really around statewide over the long term.
And the way that House 2 is written, there is flexibility, but that's where it can change through other versions of the budget. If certain cities are earmarked, you lose that flexibility. So that can also be something to advocate for if you wish.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just?
Go ahead, please.
I just want to. I appreciate Commissioner. There's still a lot to dive in here, and again, there's funding attached to some of this stuff that needs to go through the process, et cetera. But I still in my mind have a little bit of the testimony that we heard today about some of the anxiety in the field about this. And We saw that in the testimony that was submitted to us prior to the board meeting. I've heard it in the field. And so just as we dive deep into this, using that kind of building coordination and collaboration that we heard, like just making sure that we are just naming that and really trying to figure out how to best communicate that going forward. I won't again, we're very early, I understand, in the stages, but some of this is such significant changes and just part of change management, like making sure that we're bringing everybody along the journey at the right pace and through the process. And so, because it is really exciting, the intent behind it is so good. But I think, like we heard, there's been lessons learned in the past as well, and just making sure that we're bringing the right people to the table. My only other kind of just question is, and as you were talking about the literacy, I'm looking at a big blue wall that says reading opens an ocean of possibilities, which I agree with. And as we think about this work, I'm just curious your thoughts, whether it's the gateway to pre-K or the literacy work. There's a lot of partnership with DESE, right? That I think, so just like, what's the vision of like ownership around this stuff? Is it joint ownership? Is it, I'm just curious, kind of initial thoughts on that, if either of you have that.
So on the literacy launch, to my knowledge, there has been a partnered effort in developing the framework of that work, particularly as we think about the aspect of this that will most impact the early education field, which is professional development. This is one of, I would say, a number of growing initiatives where there's really meaningful partnership happening. And so, this would be one of the situations where I say it's actually good, where I can't point and say, oh, this is an EEC thing, or this is a DESE thing. It's kind of our thing.
Yeah, and it wasn't, by the way, not to put you on the spot, it wasn't a loaded thing. I actually think it's what we should be working towards, right? Like we've talked a lot about like children in the system don't know the handoff between EEC and DESE, right? They're the same child. And so I love it, actually.
You like that description?
Yeah, that was good. But it is a mindset shift, I think, as we think about the journey of those students through the entire educational system, not just what we own, not just what DESE owns, not just what higher ed owns, but that longitudinal perspective. So thank you.
I have to share an experience, because in Lawrence, we were fortunate to have the CPPI grant, but also at the same time, we were actually on the receivership, or actually doing turnaround efforts in one of the public schools, where we were feeding the children, of the CPPI grant. So we actually had data that showed the importance of early education in terms of reading levels on the 3rd grade, and this is a great opportunity to collect great data that will help us, really touch or see the importance of early childhood education and how it really helps.
I think we will actually hear that from our Salem partners in their presentation.
Yeah, I think the whole theme is a great segue to the presentation, because not only is it a state level secretary agency partnership, but really where the partnership is happening that we want to talk about today is like on the ground here between the district and the community programs and the families. So in addition to sort of the partnership at the state level, I think we're seeing it, and one of the reasons we came here was to be able to show you the partnership they have here in Salem. So,
Good stuff.
Thank you. And data helps sell budgets, so I'm all for it.
No, and I do want to acknowledge, and I've had this conversation with Board Member Siegel about this, because there is a lot of work going on that kind of longitudinal data and how to incorporate all this stuff so that we can look at it. So appreciative of members of the board who are participating in that conversation as well, so that we can align this work in a deeper way. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to invite Jocelyn Bown and Kathy Lang, both of whom have leadership roles over the CPPI program. You two are going to do a quick overview of sort of the CPPI program and kind of its history, and then we'll invite up our partners from Salem. Terrific.
And thank you, Commissioner, Secretary, members of the board. It's great to be here to talk about CPPI.
You may have to talk up, Jocelyn, so everyone
that's right.
can hear you.
I have this
Yeah.
microphone in front of my face, and I forget that it doesn't actually do anything.
This is just for the live stream, so you have to talk so they can hear. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can speak up. So very pleased to be here to talk about CPPI. This is work that I started with. My beginning at the agency was working on the precursor to CPPI, which I'll talk about in a minute, and it's just thrilling to still be here talking about it and seeing it grow. But I think to begin the conversation, it actually will be great to have a little history and go back to the federal grant that EEC had. Back in 2015, we received a federal preschool expansion grant. And this provided significant funding to support EEC in working on a model to expand, to work with local districts to expand access to preschool. And the model that we put forward and proposed, and I can't actually claim credit for that. There are a lot of people, some of whom I think are in this room, who wrote that proposal. But it did focus on working through the mixed delivery system to expand preschool and was an opportunity to explore how that could look on the ground in communities. So it fully funded new classrooms. We were working in 5 districts at that point in time. You can see those there on the map. There were some federal requirements around what we had to do with the funding. We had to focus on low-income families and prioritize children that did not have any prior early education experience. The goal was to really think about how we expanded access to new families. There was also significant funding for quality investments, so there was a lot of investment in professional learning opportunities, including joint professional learning opportunities across the community, both across the EEC license programs participating as well as with district educators. Identifying and implementing a quality curriculum was a very important part of that work. As well as some requirements around educator qualifications and salaries. So educators had to have a bachelor's degree and be paid at a level commensurate with the public school district educators. And there are a lot of expectations around meaningful family supports and engagement, including investments in comprehensive services for families. One thing that was wonderful about that opportunity is we had funding to conduct a pretty significant evaluation. And we worked with Apt Associates, and Amy Checkaway, who was here and actually now at the agency, worked on that project with us at the time. And we were able to both look at implementation, outcomes, as well as impacts, which is, I think, it was an unusual and really important opportunity to conduct a strong impact evaluation at the moment. And through that, we did see that there were significant impacts on some academic outcomes for children who participated in the program. We looked at language, literacy, math skills, as well as some executive function skills. And in the first 3, we did find significant impacts. We also saw that impacts were greatest for children who had not had any prior early education experience before and for dual language learners. So we could see that the program was really making a difference for particular groups of children that we had been focusing on and paying attention to making sure they were enrolled in the program. We also were able to track the types of professional learning opportunities that educators had and using the classroom observation tool track the quality in classrooms. And we did hear from educators that they received significant amounts of professional learning, and classroom quality across a couple of domains did increase over time. We saw increases in the warmth and responsivity of the classroom as well as just the overall organization. The area of that particular measurement that focuses on sort of the quality of the language engagements and the support for learning. We didn't see significant changes over time, but one thing that was interesting when we dug in a little bit more deeply in the data and looked at what was happening in classrooms where we had the same teacher over the course of the 4 years, we saw greater increases over time, and we actually saw some meaningful changes in that particular domain, although they weren't large enough to be significant. But I did raise the question of whether changes there just happen more slowly and it takes more time to get to improvements in that place. We also had the opportunity to survey families, and they did report increases in income over the period of time that they were participating in the preschool program, as well as increased employment. And I think that is something that you see in other studies too. When you give family access to these types of programs, it provides the opportunity for more work and for more positive economic outcomes for families. And then finally, at the end of the program, we had an opportunity to find a comparison group with other preschool classrooms or pre-K classrooms run by the same agencies that were running the classrooms through the CPPI program. So really the only difference between those classrooms from an organizational perspective was the level of funding that they were receiving and the natures of the supports that came from that funding. And we did see that there were differences. The PEG classrooms had significantly more professional learning opportunities, and we did see differences in quality. So one of the conclusions that we drew from that is that really that funding made a difference, and those opportunities really made a difference, and it is something that could be built into the system broadly. So, I mean, it was wonderful to have that opportunity to put a program in place and learn as much as we could. In 2019, the federal funding ended, and there was a budget line in the state that allowed us to introduce the Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative. We had some small planning grants on the ground to provide other districts that did not have PEG funding the opportunity to start planning and building relationships across the community and thinking about what it would look like to implement a similar model. But this is really our chance to move forward and say, okay, what have we learned and where do we want to go with this effort? First of all, I think there are a few lessons learned from the implementation that we took into account. It became clear it was very important to allow communities to determine where the highest need was locally and which families they really wanted to focus in. The driving expectation that we would focus on low-income families and those without prior preschool access was an important set, it was important to focus on those things, but I think for some communities that felt restrictive. That some communities had trouble finding families that were not already engaged in an early education program in some way, shape, or form. Communities do vary a great deal in the extent to which opportunities for 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds are available. We also found that there was sort of a collision of services for the lowest income families where they had access to a number of different opportunities and everybody was competing for the same families, while districts were also recognizing that there were other families that they would want to support. So one thing that we built into CPPI very intentionally is that the needs assessment step is a very important first step in understanding what are the nature of services available in the community, where are families attending, where are they not attending, what are families looking for, and where do they see barriers to access, so that each community can make a plan for themselves around who are the families that they are really focusing this program on making sure their needs met, and how to make sure that there's a diversity of options that are broadly accessible to the diversity of families in the community. Another thing that became very clear is a need for greater focus on special education services. Federal funding comes with the requirement you're not allowed to supplant funding that already exists, and district funding is the primary special education funding source. So we are limited in the extent to which preschool expansion grant funding could be used to support special education services. With state funding, we gained more flexibility, and one thing that we've heard loud and clear from the districts that we've been involved in, that there really is a desire to look at how children, particularly those enrolled in the private early education programs, are being supported with special education services, and look at opportunities to bring services to children and to engage with the educators working with the children around how they access those services. And so that's been something that has, I think, both been very intentionally built into the CPPI program, as well as something that has been very popular and I think drawn a number of communities in. And finally, we heard loud and clear the quality investments were deeply, deeply valued by the educators and the communities. I think, we heard a lot from educators at the end about how important it was for them to be treated as professionals and to feel like professionals and have that opportunity, and how much that meant for them and how important it was to continue their work. So that was clearly going to be an important part of this program going forward. We were also replacing federal funding with a state budget line, which was not as large as the federal funding line, and we were trying to bring in new districts as well, so that we, were expanding beyond the original 5. So the other piece that we've built into this grant is a focus on braiding funding and looking at the opportunities to use the funding that currently exists and pull that funding together around the program that we've been talking about, to support ongoing implementation and more efficient use of local resources, while also providing the CPPI grant funding to fill in the gaps, to build the infrastructure, and to support around the access agenda. So that has been the structure that we've put in place for this grant going forward. So focusing now on CPPI and what it is and what we're trying to accomplish. First of all, there's a commitment to looking at ways to expand access to preschool across the mixed delivery system. 4-year-olds are currently being served, 3 and 4-year-olds are currently being served in many different places in every community in the state. And it's really important that we, build on what already exists, strengthen the infrastructure we currently have and build on top of that. And that is one of the primary commitments and goals of CPPI. And to do this, it's really important that we build the collaboration and the coordination across everybody working in the early education space locally. So looking at the ways in which we can coordinate across public district classrooms as well as in classrooms in local EEC license programs. In particular, thinking about the fact that families do have diverse needs. And the beauty of that mixed delivery system, it has grown up to be responsive to those needs, and sustaining that is really important for families. And in concrete terms, the way we are doing this is the communities start by creating a leadership team that includes representatives from across the local mixed delivery system. And that team is led by at least one dedicated staff person, typically coming from the district, who can manage the group to work around setting priorities, putting in place a plan, and then managing the ongoing implementation, both sort of looking at how is it working and also managing the day-to-day nitty-gritty of just collaborating around an effort like this. And to accomplish everything that we just talked about, we've identified 3 priorities, and I just want to recognize Kathy Lang, who is here with me, who has really been on the ground running this program, and I think very instrumental in helping us think about, how does this actually work on the ground, and how do we structure our expectations in ways that make sense to the work and provide starting places for districts as they come in, because it is very, very hard to take all of this on at once. So often we find that districts will come in with a focus on 1 or 2 priorities, but might not always start with all 3. The first, and obviously this is core to the whole thing, is the investments in access to affordable care. So looking at ways in which to make opportunities more affordable to families, but also recognizing other barriers and potential changes that could make the system more accessible to families. The second priority is around the alignment of quality, so the extent to which the community is working together to set goals and expectations for what we want children to accomplish during their time in preschool, to look at the role of the program in accomplishing those goals, including curriculum. That's a very important topic of conversation for those focusing on that second priority, and focusing on the ways in which professional learning opportunities are built around that plan for aligned quality. And then finally, the third priority is around the access to special education, which I had talked about before, but making sure that children who are enrolled, wherever they're enrolled in the mixed delivery system, they have access to the special education services that they are due in a way that doesn't involve many transitions, challenges to families, and brings the services to them in many cases. But also another important part has been engaging with the educators working with the children, including them in the team meetings, building the referral processes, strengthening the referral processes across programs and districts, and providing supports to educators working with children with special needs around inclusive practices. Any questions on any of that? I've said a whole lot and just don't want to keep bowling ahead to where we're going next before making sure that
Jocelyn, I have one just global. As we think about the state of Massachusetts, how is our agency looking at the numbers of 3 and 4? What's the percent of 3 and 4-year-olds who have nothing, who have what, in different demographic slices? Like, what do we know? What don't we know about just the whole state?
So we, I'm very happy to report, have been working to build that data set effectively. So we've been working with the vendor 3SI to develop a data set that draws in our licensing data, information from DESE and the districts around where programs are and enrollment numbers, and putting that in conversation with census data so we can start to understand where children are, where are opportunities for children and what are some of the gaps. So we have started to look at that, and one thing that we do plan to do is now that we have that statewide, we also have the ability to share that data back out to all of these districts and support the ongoing planning process with that level of information.
That's great. So that suggests that there will be a point at which our agency can say, here's what it is now, here's where we want it to be in 3 to 5 years, here's how CPPI can get there. And you're working towards someday being able to do that.
Yep.
Great.
And one more thing just on the grant structure, very pragmatically, this is how the money flows. So we grant to districts, that is written in the budget language, that these grants go to districts. The local leadership structure is then in place to support the decision-making process about what the program looks like that is being funded and how the funding flows. The districts then do have to subgrant and manage the ongoing grant process. And having a local coordinator role at the district is a critical part of making this work. There is a significant amount of work that goes into just all of those pieces of coordinating and monitoring and making sure everything's happening that needs to happen. So that's been a particularly important part of the grant. You can see here who all the grantees are. I'm not going to read this slide to you. You can look at it. But at this point, we're supporting 21 districts. And across all the programs in those districts, we have space for almost 2,500 children.
And 12 are currently gateway cities, and there's another 14 gateway cities who are not participating yet in the CPPI program. Is that right, Jocelyn?
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
I can understand why, from an infrastructure perspective, the local coordinator is employed by the district. And I'm thinking about lessons learned from the past. And so I guess maybe that, is that essentially kind of the best option and then we have to make it work, or are there alternatives around where the kind of coordination center is of these initiatives?
We constantly talk about that.
Okay.
I think that
It's a great question for our partners, too.
Yeah, I think that is worth talking about that. I will say that the value that the district brings, the district brings a lot of value, but the district is the one partner sitting at the table who works with the entire community and has a perspective of sort of what's happening with the entire community from where they sit and where kids are going. So they play a very important role. I think pragmatically right now they get the grant funding, and having the coordinator sort of be the recipient of sitting at the entity that receives the grant funding, a large part of that role is managing the money too. So there's a pragmatic side to it as well. But having the districts have a central role and be at the table is very important. So looking ahead to both this year and then also next fiscal year as well, we have 2 new opportunities that are currently out. I think we are getting responses next week.
Friday.
Friday, this week, that's right. So very soon. One is an opportunity for our current CPPI grantees to expand. So I talked about the 3 priorities and recognize that sometimes grantees will come in starting with 1 or 2. So this is an opportunity to build out and continue the work to expand into all 3 priorities. So effectively reach full grant implementation, as well as expand the number of classrooms. And these can be, communities can fund both existing classrooms and focus sort of the accessibility work on those classrooms and the quality work, or use the funding to open new classrooms as well. And I think as we continue towards the goals that the governor set, that expansion into the new is going to be an increasingly important part of this work. And we've just expanded the amount of money that any particular community could get up to $1 million per community for the expansion opportunities. And then for new communities, there is a planning opportunity. One thing that we did learn from the process in prior planning years is that the planning process is complicated, and the more support we can provide, the better. So we have created a more supportive pathway through that process. And again, thanks to Kathy for really sort of thinking about what do we need to have that look like and how could we make that happen. So that districts can come in and communities can come in, starting just building the relationships. I think in the past we've expected the relationships to be in place to apply for the grant, but recognizing that actually we can support that relationship building right out of the gate. We are also looking, or we are planning to look for a vendor to provide technical assistance support to the grantees through the needs assessment process too. So there's an opportunity for us to help people with that process a little bit more. And I think that data that we just talked about and the fact that we can provide that data is one example of that. Another example is we want to leverage the fact that we have ourselves as an agency gone through significant cost work and think about ways in which we can support the cost analysis and the fiscal planning at the community level as well. So it would be a supportive planning process and needs assessment process, and then that moving into implementation, but also recognizing that that process can take different amounts of time depending on where a community is. So communities will actually have up to 1.5 years to complete the planning, the strategic planning, the needs assessment, the strategic planning, and the sort of early stages of implementation so that they can take the time to really get that done well. One thing that we did have in the preschool expansion grant, that first spring through the summer was a planning period. We didn't actually implement until the fall. And in the past, for CPPI grants, people have had to hit the ground running with the implementation funding. And we also do plan to sustain grantees through implementation. There won't be a new competition after the planning period to come in for implementation funding. We'll support them through that. So some will be ready to implement in the fall. Some might want to wait another year. We'll work with each grantee to determine what the next step is in through the renewal into next fiscal year. But we're designing it to be flexible and supportive.
So, Jocelyn, can I ask you a question? So understanding the planning grant, especially as we go back to where we started this agenda on kind of the broader vision of the expansion of in gateway cities, what is the incentive, or I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, if you go through this process and there are 6 gateway cities that don't apply, like, what is the incentive for them to actually participate in the program in order to achieve that broader vision? Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, because it looks like there are some gateway cities that aren't participating today, so how do we encourage them or incentivize them to participate to get to that broader vision of meeting all 26 gateway city communities?
Yeah. So we are working closely with DESE and with the Secretariat around sharing the word about this opportunity with gateway cities and talking to superintendents and to members of the district and members of the community around what both this coming year, although we're pretty much, sort of already moving on this coming year, but also the fact that we do plan to have another planning opportunity next year too. So there are multiple points in time where districts could come in. But I think awareness is important. I think, having peers
Lifting
like
up
Salem.
successes.
Yeah, to talk to about, where the value and the advantages are of this type of engagement. And communicating that clearly is an important part.
And you'll see when we get to Salem, and it sounds like maybe you have some in Lawrence too, is that there's real data on the outcomes. I think that will speak to the districts as well.
I'll just have a comment about just having the district involved as being very familiar with or connected to the community. I just don't want to miss saying that the community providers are also super connected to the community because they understand the needs of those families that full day, full year. Different families have different needs, so I think that we need to think about it as we plan this program. And obviously, there's a lot. I think it was Paul was saying, like, values. Actually, the secretary, values, norms, and principles that need to be applied based on our learning experiences from different. I mean, there's a lot of success stories, and there's a lot of things that we can learn from as well across the state. So there's a lot of potential here, and but I think both sides have. I just have to advocate on behalf of the community
And I
providers.
apologize. I was not trying to imply that. I really was just meaning that the district as an organization serves everybody in the community once they get to kindergarten and on. But each of the community, what I didn't say and should have said is each community provider has a very, very deep understanding, which is what you're pointing out, of the families that they work with and often perspectives that the district doesn't have about the communities. So that's why the partnership is so important.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, couple more slides and we'll get to
The last two I think I can go through quickly. This is just the process laid out in terms of moving from partner. I think I've talked through most of this, but moving from building partnerships, a leadership team, the needs assessment, strategic planning, and then on into implementation with a little bit of information about how we think about funding it that I don't think I need to go through. And just to close this out and thinking about the goal of universal access and how we do this through this mechanism, the first point is we are putting out guidance to superintendents. It's what we just talked about in answer to your question, Paul, and really getting the word out about this opportunity to help people understand the advantages of this approach and the opportunities it provides, as well as ways to start doing the work. The strategic planning component of this work is a very important part, and I think our increased engagement in it, particularly by both directly supporting, but also then being able to pull out lessons learned across the needs assessment and the strategic planning work being done across the communities, will be really helpful to us as an agency in thinking about how to move forward with this. We will prioritize gateway cities. I think this conversation has been had as well. And encourage gateway cities to participate, but continue to have an open grant process. And then finally, we will need to continue to understand the challenges that happen, that state level structures create potentially through policies, regulations. We know some of these, we've talked about some of these before, and commit ourselves to working together, EC, DESE, and the Secretariat, around some of those conflicts and resolving some of the barriers to
We're at this really
success.
important pivot point, I think, where we had the PEG grant, we have had CPPI out there in a very flexible way where we can now build sort of a common set of expectations, as Jocelyn was saying, and a more structured approach to sort of what are the key elements that need to be there, and what is that balance between sort of flexibility and standards for expectations. And I think we're at that moment where we can really begin to provide a more sort of standard set of guidance about what it is a CPPI and moving towards universal looks like. And then we have tools like childcare financial assistance and our childcare licensing regulations that we've also learned create barriers to some of the good partnerships that want to happen locally. And those are all on the table for us so that we can use the tools we have to change those to make it easier to blend the funding, or easier to deliver the classrooms in the schools or in the community in a more consistent and equitable way. So, all right. That was a great overview. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I think there was a real hunger for sort of what is this program and where is it going?
Before Jocelyn, do you have a question?
I do. So, sorry if this is a silly question, but so CPPI, based on the budget amount for the coming fiscal year, I mean, the funding is to sort of enable this collaboration. The funding is not there to add capacity to the system.
It depends on how you define that, but it's certainly not, unlike the primary difference between the preschool expansion grant, which fully funded new classrooms, is the CPPI does not do that.
Yeah.
The idea is that there are other funding sources that are supporting programming.
Okay.
And that we're leveraging those and then building on top of it. So the CPPI grant does build capacity, but not by funding a whole classroom. Does that make sense, and does that answer?
It's not funding new classrooms or new slots or.
Well, it can, but not the whole cost of the classroom or the slot.
Okay.
So you might hear a little bit more from Salem about this too. So in the public schools where they're using some CPPI money to provide the extended time. So that is adding additional capacity. They're using some of the funds for coaching and curriculum, high impact instructional materials and coordinator and the funding for some of the itinerant services to get the specialists to the kids. So they'll say it better than I can.
I guess that my question is just from the administration's perspective, if we're saying we want, universal pre-K in these gateway cities, and maybe this comes back to the question of like, what is the delta that we're trying to get to? Like, how big is that gap? But my understanding of it would be that there's a largish gap to get over between sort of current state and universality, right? And so I'm just wondering sort of like, where is that? Like, it seems like there's an infusion of funding that is going to be necessary in order to get us there. And maybe it just already exists and it just needs to be coordinated, but it just seems to me that there might be like more funding that's needed.
I think it's a both and. I mean, first of all, when you look at the numbers of sort of percentages of 4-year-olds in particular that are currently in a program based on our best estimates, they vary a fair amount from district, but there's some communities where pretty much all 4-year-olds are actually currently enrolled in a program.
Oh.
Many are up to like 60, 70%. So particularly when you're focused on 4-year-olds, access isn't always the primary problem. So the issue might be smaller in some places than we think, in that it's the barriers to access might be an affordability issue rather than there isn't actually a seat
Yeah.
for a child, for example.
Right. And I guess that we could say that the parents are just going to pay for some of it.
Some piece of it.
Yeah.
And some piece of it is paying for making sure the early education experience is common across all the
Yeah.
settings, right? So
Yeah.
that's a little bit where the variation in the local districts and trying to sort of blend, whether it's district-based funding or our child care financial assistance funding with CPPI funding and putting together, the full package.
Because it's pulling from 3 different.
At
fund-
least
yeah.
3. I
Yeah.
mean, these guys are pulling from more, I think, in Salem right now, but, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Any other questions for Jocelyn and Catherine before we invite our panel up? Great.
Well, thank you
Catherine,
all,
Jocelyn,
and we
thank
will
you.
make space for our panel.
Great. So Dr. Reich and Deputy Superintendent Kate Carboni, who having a dedicated staff person, and then our community partners. And we'll ask you to each introduce yourself, but I want to say again that it is so clear to me coming here to Salem that we have our mayor, we have our representative here. We have partners from the community, the superintendent. We have a dedicated deputy superintendent who has early childhood education and the growth of this in her portfolio. And without that breadth of leadership,
Yeah, you drive it.
they don't even fit at the table.
Yeah. Got enough chairs?
Are enough chairs? Okay, terrific.
All right.
Great.
So, all right, thank you, and thank you again for having us here and being part of this. I do want to kick off by introducing our state rep and also school committee member, Mr. Manny Cruz. I'll just say this, again, one of the reasons I wanted to come to Salem is I had a history or experience in other gateway cities in expanding pre-K, and I wanted to come to a community that was invested in this work. And Mr. Cruz was a big part of that. He was on the school committee when I got hired. They made it very clear they were going to double down on early education here in Salem. I also am proud to say that he's going to single-handedly keep us employed with his own children coming up through the system, and so we got to keep him happy because we want those cruises coming through in the coming years. So I'll just turn it over to Mr. Cruz, who's just a great supporter of our schools, but also the work that we've done in early childhood education.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reich. And
Representative, can we just move the microphone down closer to you? Thank you. Yeah, yeah. We want all your fans to be able to hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He doesn't usually need a microphone, this guy.
And thank you, Dr. Reich, for the kind words. I only have 2 children, by the way, so I'm not going to be able to keep you.
Well, is that it? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. But to that end, I just wanted to express my gratitude to the superintendent. I was a part of his hiring committee now almost 4 years ago, and he did hear us loud and clear. Early ed, early ed, early ed. We wanted to create these opportunities because we recognized if there was one thing that was going to equalize literacy rates, the ability of our students to thrive in the classroom, it was that early intervention. I'll say for my part, I stand before you not only a proud graduate of this public school district, but also a proud graduate of Head Start. Growing up in a low-income family household, single-parent household, I know that Head Start program paid many dividends for me, and I likely wouldn't be standing here before you as the state representative and the vice chair of the Salem School Committee. I do want to acknowledge my dear friend Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Kershaw, who joined us earlier in the year for a visit here to Salem with your distinguished staff to learn more about our mixed delivery model and the deep partnerships that exist here in Salem. And I couldn't tell you how excited I was not only to welcome you then, but to also see the commitment of both the Secretary and the Commissioner to really thinking about models like Salem and how we could expand them to other areas of the Commonwealth. I do want to recognize that we are joined by another one of my colleagues, School Committee member Veronica Miranda, who's here in the room. Thank you, Member Miranda, for being here. She's been on the committee for a short time, but I think one thing that folks find out right away when you join the committee in Salem is that we're going to talk about early education in our model here. There's a few things that I would just love to raise up and express my gratitude for. So I want to thank the Secretary, Commissioner Kershaw, the board, and Governor Healy for their work around thinking about equitable strategies for increasing access, universal access to early education. This is an equity strategy that's going to pay dividends for the students who need us the most and the families that need us the most. Coming out of the pandemic, when the secretary was the superintendent in the neighboring district, we all saw the tremendous impact that the lack of access to both early education and care was having on our families, and especially those in gateway cities. And so this approach here, to be able to take the investment from fair share, to stand up in our values during a really difficult time in our budget, and to place these new investments, I think is critical. I heard you all loud and clear about reaching out to your legislators. Know that I am on board, and I will still welcome the conversation, because I do think that we're going to be heading into some rocky fiscal times, but our commitment to public education, universal pre-K, it cannot waver. If that's any of the lessons that we've learned from the pandemic, that this is a real strategy for ensuring that our kids will learn. So I do think when you all visited the last time, we shared with you some data about the impact that this program was having. I saw it firsthand as a committee member. I saw it during the visit. The incredible staff that are here in Salem have made tremendous strides. And so I think the only other things that I would just raise up as continued food for thought, things for consideration as your legislative and budgetary priorities continue to advance throughout the session, is that as we continue to think about the rates, I want to +1 the importance of increasing those rates because of what they mean for our educators and our professionals who are serving our children and families. We know all the research, all the evidence out there suggests that if we're going to keep folks retained in the early education space, that means we need to compensate them appropriately to build the conditions in which our families are going to continue to have access to seats. And then I think the other piece that I would just make mention of is that as you continue to think about these investments, to think about the other equity levers. And specifically, I want to think about our multilingual learners and our students. I want to thank the Secretary for his continued commitment to equity for all students. And as we think about our multilingual learners in early education, there's a real opportunity for them to become really fluent in 2 languages and starting in pre-K. That is why I'm so excited about the great work that Ms. Smith and Ms. Rogers are leading here in this building and enrolling my daughter in the fall, and then later my son. And then since the Secretary, you raised the point about literacy launch, I can't tell you how excited I am about this. I echo your concerns and your urgency around what we're seeing for our students. 50% of our schools across the Commonwealth, Boston Globe reports that 50% of them have low quality literacy materials and curriculums. And when we think about what that means for our students, I am not going to say that MCAS is the end-all be-all. It is a snapshot in time, but nonetheless, when we look at those scores and we see what's happening with our Black, Latino, low-income students and our multilingual learners, it's an unacceptable situation. So I want to thank the Secretary, the Governor, and really everyone who's advocated for this reinvestment in literacy. I think it's going to be critical as we think about how we move towards the post-pandemic education era. Mr. Secretary, I'm going to quote you: stabilize, transform, and heal. If we're going to do that, I do think one of the things that I would just urge as we continue to go through the process together, you have a partner in me, is that as we think about that stream of funding and that 50% number of districts that are not adopting high quality evidence-based strategies, is to also think about the opportunities for accountability and partnership. How do we ensure that those districts are also adopting the highest quality, scientifically based literacy strategies so that our students who need us the most are not continuing to, suffer through an experience that's not equitable and that is unjust. So I would welcome the opportunities to just work with you and your commissioners on ensuring that as we think about those conditions of funding, that we ensure that districts are operating with fidelity and doing what's in the best interest of children. So you gave me the opportunity to be able to speak, Dr. Zreik, and apologies if I went a little bit over time, but educational equity matters for all of our children, and the investments that the Governor's office and the Secretary have put forward, I think clearly show that our Commonwealth continues to try to be first in the nation when it comes to education, not just for some, but for all. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz, and you can see why we take him along for the show. He's got great enthusiasm and passion for this work that we're trying to do, and we appreciate that. So I just want to open, before I introduce the glamour shot folks in the picture behind you, I just want to just give a little more context, and then we'll pass it along. But we made a strategic decision in Salem to invest our ESSER funding around the launch of a mixed delivery model for pre-K. And some were, we opened classes, additional classes within the Salem Public Schools. And as you'll hear, also we partnered and we leveraged the CPPI funding to involve community partners in that work as well. And you'll learn more about that here. We thought that it was an important investment to make in order for our youth to be school ready, academically, socially, and emotionally. And during COVID, we saw, as many of you did see, families struggling, particularly our Black and brown families struggling with childcare, and we saw the negative impacts of not having consistent, high-quality schooling and childcare for our youngest learners. This community sprang into action, as many communities did around the state, and we have had, in my humble opinion, tremendous success because of the will, the fact that we had space in our system and in our city, the partnerships, and a profound belief amongst the partners and city leaders that early education opportunities are a game changer for young people in this city. So we feel like we have a unique story, and I would just caution that, and some of you mentioned it, every city's context is different. And I think that's really important, having been in a couple of different cities. The path to doing this well depends on the uniqueness of every community. We're excited to tell the Salem story here today, and we're proud of the mixed delivery model where we have more consistency of curriculum, high quality coaching, professional development, better materials, compensating educators better than previously before, and special education supports and student supports for all kinds of learners here. And while, again, every city and community context is different, we do think we have a model that others can learn from, and we hope to be able to inform the work at the state level. So thank you for letting us tell that story. So the people, of course, the superintendent may be able to tell a little bit of the story, but I don't really have any of the answers. So I'm going to defer to people that really do the work every day, and those are the people that are sitting to my right and my left. So I'm just going to introduce the people who, if you really have the specific questions, ask them, don't ask me. To my left, I have our Deputy Superintendent, Kate Carboni, who really has been the point person for the school system in this work. Charity Lizette, how do I say that? Lizette Zalzama, or I just call you Charity. So, who's the executive director of the Salem YMCA and has been a good partner. We have Celeste Hamilton who's the site director of Salem Community Childcare. We have Tabitha Williams, who's the owner of Ashley's Preschool and Daycare. So you can, just a little wave there. Yeah, you got your red on too. Leanne Smith, who's the principal of the school that you're in right now, the Salem Early Childhood Center. And then we have an extraordinary coach. Our CPPI grant coordinator and early learning coach is Shauna Earps, who's been a longstanding Salem Public Schools educator. So they're here to tell the story, and so I'm going to pass it to them.
Okay, which is a lot of slides around introductions, so we'll just buzz through that. So, thank you, Commissioner Kershaw, Board.
Can I just ask you to move that microphone a little closer to you? Thank you.
Yes. Board Chair and Secretary Tutwiler and the entire board for really giving us the opportunity to participate in the CPPI grant. It really has funded some really just dynamic and amazing work, and we are pleased to be here today to tell you a little bit about our story. So I'm going to take you down memory lane a little bit and sort of give some context and background around how we really got started in this work. Back in 2016, Salem joined the By All Means initiative at Harvard, an initiative led by then Secretary of Education Paul Reville at Harvard's Education Redesign Lab. And that initiative was aimed at developing comprehensive systems that focus on child well-being and addressing those factors that impact the opportunity gap and educational outcomes for children, both long-term and short term. And Salem was really fortunate to participate in that initiative. We participated for about 4 years, and a couple of really important things came out of that work. One was that we did establish a children's cabinet, and on that cabinet we had many leaders from across the Salem community. We had the superintendent and other members of his or her cabinet, whoever was in that seat at the time. The mayor, of course, was a participant in that. We had leaders like Charity and others from community-based organizations. The dean of the School of Education from Salem State was also part of that. So they participated in the By All Means, but also, met as a cabinet to start to think about ways in which they could really move the needle on the experience of children in the city of Salem. And one of the first things that they identified that they wanted to launch was a City Connects initiative. And so that model, and for those of you who may be familiar or not with the City Connects model, it is a systemic approach to addressing out-of-school factors that create inequities and barriers to children's success. And so we launched that model across all of our K-8 schools, and we were the first district in the country to do that. And so what that looked like was we positioned a City Connects coordinator in every school. We partnered with Boston College and leveraged their expertise and resources. But really what that program does is focus on each individual child, not just students at greatest need, of course, prioritizing them, but every child, because every child brings strengths and gifts to the process, but also, can be served in new and interesting ways. So there's a review process that takes place early in the year, and then the City Connects coordinator serves as a liaison to the community to support families in accessing resources to better serve their children. And so that model is still flourishing in our system and is a hallmark to our student support work. And I know that you learned or discussed a little bit about the CPPI expansion grant, which we are just finalizing our submission for that on Friday, and we will be proposing moving that model down to the pre-K space, so that it's sort of a continuity of work that we started many years ago. So soon after that, early work really focused on getting City Connects up and running in the Salem public schools. We did start to turn our sights to pre-K as the next really, opportunity and space for changing outcomes for kids and creating conditions for long-term success. So we were interested in accessing CPPI funds to help us do that. And so we were getting organized, to organize and support cross-collaboration between the public schools and our community-based organizations. We applied early on twice, and they were not successful applications, but we did get feedback, and we heeded that feedback and took it to heart. We were not discouraged. We were committed to this work, and we forged ahead. And we really understood that we needed to pay attention to building an infrastructure so that we had something in place that was going to sustain the work as we moved forward. And so that's what we turned our sights to. And so we started to really think about different ways in doing that. So one of the things that we did do was that we selected a curriculum early on. We used 3 chairs for pre-K here and across our partnership. And so we brought that on. We started to do some joint professional development across the public schools and the community partners. We converted one of our positions. We have a coaching model here in the Salem Public Schools. So rather than asking for another position, we took one of our positions and we converted it to an early learning coach who could support not only our pre-K teachers, but also pre-K teachers in the partner programs with implementing the new curricula. We convened an advocacy group that we and met regularly with. We had members like from Strategies for Children, our state representative, state senator, members from DESE. I think Jocelyn joined us a few times, Donna Trainum, and we convened pretty much quarterly to just talk about, how to sort of get organized for expanding our work and really focusing on quality. And then, of course, funding was always on the agenda. The most important outcome of that early work was forming the partnership across the Salem Public Schools and the 3 community partners, so the YMCA, Salem Community Child Care, and Ashley's. That started back then and has only flourished under the CPPI structure. We also did propose and got support from the mayor and the school committee at the time to post for a position that we were calling the director of the Salem Children's Alliance, a position that would sort of straddle the city and the public schools and wake up every day thinking about young children in the city of Salem and what it would take to make them successful. It is a position, and the superintendent was going to talk about this a little later, that sits on the mayor's cabinet, and in that unique seat has the opportunity to help leverage resources from across city departments for an all-kids agenda. And then, of course, we also did leverage ESSER monies quite significantly. For 2 years, we put out a $180,000 RFP to the 3 partners, and, in this idea of braided funding models, did leverage some of those resources to support the partners, in addition to CPPI funds. And part of our concern was, as ESSER sunsets, we no longer have those resources to do that. But we also did leverage ESSER to revitalize our classrooms, make sure that there were lots of books and toys and other kinds of materials to support purposeful play in ways that supports the themes in the curriculum. So finally, into 2022, we did apply for CPPI and we were awarded a grant, and we kind of got into the pipeline, and that was a great day. And so we got that shorter grant to start, and then we are in our 2nd year of the 3-year grant and poised quite happily to be ready to apply for the expansion grant, which is due on Friday. So just a little bit about our milieu. So we call ourselves the Salem Pre-K Partnership, and that consists of 19 classrooms presently across all of, oopsie, sorry. I went way ahead. Okay. 19 classrooms across the Salem Public Schools as well as our community partners. So in Salem Public Schools, we have our Early Childhood Center that's led by Leanne Smith, and she'll be talking to you specifically about what's been happening in their program as a result of our partnership with the CPPI grant. We have 10 classrooms in her site. And then, as the superintendent mentioned, we leveraged ESSER to launch 4 additional pre-K classrooms, 2 at our Bates Elementary School and 2 at Horace Mann. And then with our partners, we have 2 CPPI supported classrooms at Salem Community Child Care, 2 at the YMCA, and 1 at Ashley's Preschool. We do have an interesting opportunity. We have 2 other organizations that do serve 4-year-olds co-located in our buildings. So we have Pathways for Children that I believe have like 8 or 9 classrooms, and they're located at the Horace Mann School. And then we have Angela's preschool that has 1 preschool class, pre-K classroom, and that is located at the Salem High School. And so we have invited both of them to participate in the pre-K expansion grant, and they have both accepted, and so we're excited about that. We will have a total of 22 additional pre-K classrooms in CPPI if this goes through, because the YMCA is also interested in adding a third classroom. So we will have 5 partners and 22 classrooms. And prior, currently right now, without those additional classrooms, at the top of the slide, you can see that we have about 300, our kindergarten enrollment is about 315, and we served 170 4-year-olds in our CPPI classrooms. So we're about 54% of the kids are coming out of these classrooms where we're really hyper-focused on quality and really upping our game around great experiences for kids.
And if the expansion grant goes through, Kate, what % will you be at?
We'd be around 67 if all of the kids are 4-year-olds. I don't know exactly what the dynamics are in the 3 additional classrooms. And we are also, the superintendent did mention, we are adding through our operational budget a dual language pre-K classroom here at the Bentley School, which is our dual language program. It's in its 3rd or 4th year of upscaling into a bilingual Spanish language program.
So just a couple notes before we get into the more specifics. The structure has to be there, and somebody mentioned this before, like communities have to have the infrastructure to do this work. And you can see on the chart, this is our organizational structure that does include the work on the school side with our leadership team. Again, I want to reiterate how supportive the school committee has been in this work. And the mayor, who's the chair of the committee, and you know who our former mayor is, because I'm sure you talk with her quite a bit, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, who was just a fierce proponent for this work, and that's carried on to this administration. And then we have organized our team here to have a principal of the Early Childhood Center, and then our special education director and our director of student supports are firmly, we see pre-K as our work. This is not independent. And I think some districts don't see anything before kindergarten as somebody else's job or somebody else's work. We see this as an important part of our responsibility. Then on the city side, we're really excited that we have a new director of the Salem Children's Alliance. Sarah Roy is somewhere in the audience. Thinks this might be her 2nd week of work, and so we don't want to overwhelm her yet. But we're excited to have somebody to kind of bring this together because we value our partners. And I've learned my lesson. I've said this before. I used to just want to take all the kids. That's not, as a school system leader, that's not possible. I don't think that's necessarily fair. It doesn't meet the needs of all families, and we've got very strong community organizations in Salem. And so, but we do need help kind of organizing ourselves and coordinating ourselves. And so there's a lot of work that happens with kids outside of the schools as well. And so having someone be the director of the Children's Alliance who not only works with the schools, but works with all organizations that work with young children in the city is really important. So we're excited about that. And then this pre-K partnership, which is a blended model, it's a mixed delivery model, is really a school district and community partner work. And so we feel like the infrastructure is there, but we do have work to do. And I'll just speak to that if you want to switch the slides. Some of the opportunities we see and the challenges are, we still want to, we don't have a single point of entry right now. We really struggle with matching families to what they really need. Every program offers slightly different things, which is great, but it's too challenging to navigate as a parent right now, and it's sort of hit or miss. And we try to help families with in our enrollment center, but we're not there yet. And we know that some parents need the resources that the community partners provide. Some like having the school setting because they have older children in the schools. Some offer transportation, which we don't. And so that we have to still figure that out. We're also working with the city. I spoke to the mayor about this today, of creating a welcome center that would be for all families, where our enrollment would be center would move to where most of our families live, right in downtown Salem, would be the point of entry for families. And it would be more than just like an assignment enrollment center, but it would be truly a family wraparound center where families could get information on all resources in the city. And so we're we're hopefully going to be opening that next year. So that's part of our plan in becoming more organized as a city. We also, we opened classrooms with ESSER funds. We were below minimum aid. We were not. We're now struggling to figure out how to fund. We have a plan now in order to fund it. But it's challenging to be able to continue to provide funding, especially when pre-K students don't count toward the full allotment of students as part of Chapter 70. It does not cover. You can say you add students, but adding one pre-K student does not. The funding that comes with it is not sufficient to provide them with the education they deserve, especially when you talk about multilingual learners, you talk about students with disabilities, and making sure that we have ample resources for them. And our partner programs don't have the resources necessary to boost teacher salaries, provide tuition relief to the extent that they have some excellent educators. Unfortunately, sometimes they come to us because we pay more, and we don't want to be fighting with one another for precious talent that exists. Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir. That's obviously something to help our partners. They've gotten a boost in terms of materials and resources and things like that. But salaries is a big part of what we know we need to do. And so I think for us, we're very excited about the access, the improved quality, but we have to continue to work on our coordination and our coherence as a system in order to get to where we want to be. So with that, I'll turn it over to other folks who can talk to you about what this looks like day to day in our schools and in our partner organizations.
One more slide for me.
Oh, back to okay.
So this is just an overview to, Jocelyn earlier narrated that there are the three priority strands in the CPPI grant, and so it's no surprise that our work that we've been doing tightly aligns to that, and we've organized this in that structure. And so I actually did have a handout, I don't know if in that blue folder, because the type is really little, but these are some of the things that we've been really focused on. And strand one is the work around supporting tuition relief for families, as well as boosting the educator salaries. They're doing extra work, and they're working long days already. And so this is really important part of the grant. And Jocelyn also referred to as the district, sort of being the structure where the money sort of flows out. We have a really good system where they invoice us monthly, and we, our grants office, disperses the funds right to the partners so that those funding sources are there. I would say strand two is where we've really sort of upped our game and done a lot of work. I told you already that we did adopt a curriculum. We adopted other assessments and screening tools. So we're using 3 chairs for kindergarten, pre-K, as the curriculum, my IGD as a benchmark assessment, so we can monitor the growth in numeracy and literacy skills. We do the class assessments twice a year, so we hire out outside rater who comes in, and that data has been really, really helpful. We sit with the educators, both at the partner organizations and in our classrooms, to review that data. They're really interested in it. We've used it to help establish professional practice goals at the beginning of the year. So that's been super, super helpful for us. We also have been able to, as I said, do joint professional development. We ran a course this year, or it was like a 4-part series on the science of reading. I know we're all really, focused on, learning more about, best practices in literacy, and so that really is important at the pre-K level. So for both our partner teachers and our teachers, we partnered with the Hill for Literacy, and we've been doing that training during some joint professional development. So that's been a real highlight for us, is that piece. And then we hired an additional early learning coach. So we have 2 coaches, Shauna and Jenny Baez, who manage, divide the classrooms up and make sure that they're connecting. These are two educators who have pre-K and kindergarten experience, and I would characterize them as teacher whisperers. The teachers see them coming and they light up. It's a real wonderful relationship between the coaches and the teachers, very supportive, because this is hard work, and but they're doing a great job. And then in strand 3, this is, to Jocelyn's point earlier too, like we wrote our original grant across all 3 strands, and that was a heavy lift. I think we really did our best work in strand 1 and 2. Strand 3, we got to start, but I think we're really going to accelerate our work there under the expansion grant. And the things that we're proposing. But what we did do is we wanted to make sure services were out in the programs. And so based on our feedback from our community leaders, they told us that speech and language was really important. So we've hired a speech and language assistant who's working under the supervision of one of our speech and language pathologists. And she is working out in the community, delivering services in the community classrooms, doing groups, and so forth. And we have some ideas of how she can do some more prevention-related work under the expansion grant. We also hired a full-time, because one of the other things that programs told us is they were really struggling with student behavior, dysregulation, children who were really, having some hard times. And so we hired a full-time BCBA, which is really sort of unheard of that we were able to. It is one of our Salem Public School staff who we knew was exceptional. And so, I think much to the chagrin of the school that she left to do this work, but happily for the partnership, she is, working, and she worked over the summer. Both of these staff are able to work over the summer. We pay them a little extra through stipends through the grant to be on site in the partner programs to provide those services. So that's what we've been up to. So now we're going to turn on to we're starting to collect some early indicators of impact. We had a whole bunch of slides, and then we narrowed it down to 2 just to give you a little glimpse, and Shauna's going to talk about those.
So this slide just shows the results of our some of the subtests of our universal screening assessment related to early literacy. We also do screen within the area of early numeracy, but this one just aligns a little bit more tightly to the slide that you're going to see next. We do this screener in all of our CPPI and public school classrooms, so we are using the same screener. You can see that the number of students in the green from the beginning of the year to the end of the year is growing, and that we are closing the gap for the students that are in the gray and the red from the fall to the spring. So we are working in our public school classrooms and our community partner school classrooms to look at those outcomes for kids, right? So, Steve often says that we've expanded seats, and Kate reminds him that they are quality seats. And so it's my goal to create quality, equity, and consistency across however many classrooms we have, because we really are a great team and we work really well together. After we do the assessments, we meet with the directors. So I go over and meet with the directors. We review them kind of from a program perspective. That was really helpful. CPPI actually built that in, so then it makes you make that time to make that step happen. We meet with the directors. We look at the results for some overall trends within each program. Our programs are all very different from one another. The needs of their students, the level of comfort and experience of their teachers. So we review it as a program level, and then we also meet with the teachers. And so then we look at, what does this mean for instruction, big picture instruction using the curriculum, but also what are some of the kids that we really want to make sure that we're looking at in the fall, and how are we trying to close those gaps for them as soon as we can. We also have, which I didn't realize was quite out of the norm, but we do use the same curriculum. So we are using 3 cheers for pre-K across all of our classrooms, which has been really helpful in having common language when we come together for professional development. So we're also very lucky When I'm on some of the CPPI calls, they're like, how do you make that happen? But we meet for
That was going to be
profession-
my question, by the way, of how you make that happen.
It seems to be a popular one. We are able to meet almost monthly. In year one, we did meet monthly. I try to be very responsive. I know that all of our programs are different. We were coming back from COVID. Staffing was a challenge. And so it was really hard to pull the teachers from their programs, and the directors were super great about getting to them as often as they could. But we were meeting monthly. That felt like it was a little maybe too much. So then we pared it back, and we did it maybe 4 times the following year. And then the feedback was like, oh, I think they're pretty consistently staffed right now. You'll hear in future slides, our teachers have stayed for 2 years in our community partner programs. So we don't have the same turnover they don't have the same turnover that I was seeing in some of the programs when we first got up and going. So we're building capacity over time, which has been great. So this year we landed like around 6 or 7. We always start together for common professional development before school starts. Typically that is related to the class. We do use the class observation tool in all of our classrooms. So they're all being rated sort of according to the same criteria to ensure that we are providing quality in all of our classrooms. There's lots of domains. And so to really track growth, as Jocelyn referred to earlier, is challenging because there's lots of, and it's down to the decimal point. And so we've approached it by looking at teacher growth. And we have seen pretty substantial, we focused this year on concept development in the instructional support domain because our other domains, we were kind of making some progress. And that one was a challenge across all of our locations, which they did confirm is normal and makes sense. So we've been able to use some of our joint professional development to sort of support teachers in what does that look like in classrooms when it's being done well and when it's at a high quality level. We also, as Kate alluded to, we used 4 of our half days to participate in the science of reading, the first 4 modules that are designed for early childhood. So they're the early childhood ones, which are newer versions. We did them virtually so that our partners were able to stay in the programs. And that really supported some common shifts in understanding around how to support students' early literacy and also how to better support the kiddos who are struggling. And so that's given us some common language. It's allowed for common modeling. We do partner with Hill for Literacy. The way that we kind of got creative is that she's currently in our public school classroom, so she'll model a lesson, once a month for teachers. And then our other early learning coach goes to the community partners and models the same lesson so that when Sharon then talks about something in our common professional development, again, we have an equitable experience as teachers. So we've been using, some of that to drive our professional development. We've also we survey the teachers, so we ask them, what are some things that you could use more support with? That is where the social emotional and self-regulation theme started to emerge in our preschool set post-COVID. So we have been able to provide some professional development around that, and then we were actually able to put some staff, into the community partner programs over the summer and this school year to really support the teachers. The shared curriculum resource, I think for me, the teacher feedback is that the professional development has been the biggest game changer for them. So consistently between community partner schools and our public school teachers, they feel that the professional development has been what's helped them and supported them the most. I also think that being able to do that around a shared curriculum resource has been really helpful because we know that we're developing their knowledge, through themes, helping them figure out how the world works while developing their content understanding, while also really thinking about ways to integrate those themes and being thoughtful around purposeful play and balancing that with really being data-driven around what our kids need and how are we matching what they need to what they're showing us.
Shauna, can I just ask, the curriculum alignment was, and I think it was 5 partners, right? Like, was everybody already using the same so you all met to figure out how to align, okay.
We did. When I came aboard, one of the first things that I did was we met with We had had a few curriculum resources like sort of be presented to a group. We had someone from Salem State there. There's not a lot of options. When you think about, like, I was a former literacy coach, the scope of literacy programs, you know, that you could be choosing from is much more vast. 3 Cheers for Pre-K is actually the revised OWL curriculum, which is a curriculum, like, people start nodding their heads when they hear of that one, is revised, the revised OWL. But no, we did that as part of year 1.
Because I'm just thinking about, you mentioned common language, professional development, you almost create like a community of practice, right? And grounding on the same curriculum, if you didn't do that, that would be really hard to do, right? Because you're kind of not resonating with what your day-to-day is versus being able to resonate and build that community of practice is just powerful. Yeah.
It was very helpful. We spent the first year unpacking that curriculum. So what are the parts of the day? What do centers look like? You know, what does a schedule look like when you're using that curriculum? What are the materials that you have? And then we were also able to use funding to purchase materials that more strongly aligned to the themes. So then we were able to outfit classrooms with more books that build content knowledge around the themes that they're learning. I think also being a prior kindergarten teacher, how, you know, kindergarten is not the kindergarten, doesn't look the same as it did when I started in education 25 years ago. In that push, our kids lost, like, there was an assumption that they were going to, like, get these skills somewhere, that then they came to kindergarten and they didn't necessarily have them. Things like being able to play with language, rhyming, beginning sounds, and alliteration. There was a gap. And so we've spent a lot of time, one of our instructional priorities has been around phonological awareness. And so not pushing higher things sooner, but what do they really need with oral language and vocabulary and phonological awareness? Those were the modules that we started with science of reading. So we like, what are elements of effective instruction? What does brain research tell us about how young kids learn? Oral language and vocabulary, and really getting kids talking, and phonological awareness. So it aligned beautifully to, like, what we knew our kids kind of needed.
Yeah, I'm thinking about even the multi-language learners, right, coming out of pre-K into kindergarten, knowing 2 languages, like how powerful that is just for lots of reasons. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then our next slide shows, this is our, we adopted STAR Early Literacy as our universal screener here in Salem and STAR Reading. So this slide shows the results of the early literacy results for kindergarten. The first graph shows the scores before our first cohort of kiddos moved up. So as Kate said, we've sent approximately 170 students. You can see the increase in proficiency from the year before we sent our kids up to the year we sent our kids up grew 13%. With being at or above grade level on those early literacy skills, which was a gain of 13%, and overall they ended that year at 70%. We're now working with our kindergarten teachers. They have rolled up to first grade, our first grade teachers and soon to be second grade teachers, to adjust their expectations for kids who are coming in looking much different than what they have gotten in the past. And they really need to be prepared for that, because they're sort of have an expectation. I'm like, oh, wait till they get here. Like, they know lots of things. And so we've been working to make sure that they're aware that there is a shift, and that shift is going to keep working its way up through the grades. In addition to Teacher Whisperer, I live and die by data, because it's the only way that I know who needs what, like which teachers need which support. What teachers, need some support in quality of feedback, while others have got that down. It's the same with our kiddos. And so I've been informally sort of tracking them, because I want to see how they fare, throughout. We have been able to partner with our IT department much better. They are using the online screening tool that we're using, like, we've generated accounts. We were able to push apps to their iPads. Everyone has the same, that goes through IT, but their kiddos were also given SASITs. And so we have a way now to track them longitudinally in our information system beyond just what, like, I can do in my Google spreadsheet, to really look at the impact of the work over time. And that's my favorite picture from our last visit. Our littlest on her tippy toes.
Great.
I didn't know that was going to be in there. I'm actually wearing the exact same. I do have more ties.
Sorry.
All right, so now we're going to hear from each program leader about what this work has meant in their specific context. So to Leanne, who is the principal at our Salem Public Schools Early Childhood Center.
Thank you. Salem Public schools are excited to share successes in the following areas, but as I sit here and think, I could have, more and more and more slides because there's just so many things that we're excited about. As you've heard a lot about, we have 3 Cheers for Pre-K as our curriculum. This is our 3rd year using it. And I'm really excited to say at this point, I feel like it's fully implemented. Students are across the board being engaged in instruction using 3 Cheers for Pre-K. We've also supplemented, it's a really solid, great thematic program, but we've used some CPPI money to supplement and buy things like books. So we've looked at the titles in 3 Cheers for Pre-K and the themes and bought books that mirror those themes, mostly along the lines of like Windows and Mirrors books. So we've written a lot of interactive read aloud lessons to support that. So, but also using the 3 Cheers for Pre-K, we've developed assessments that are based on the high priority standards and skills that we've identified from that curriculum. We use those assessments and collect information, and we do some deep dives into data-driven instruction to guide our differentiated instruction in small groups and in what Tier 2 looks like and what reteaches look like. And in that area, we've used a lot of CPPI money to buy materials to supplement that small group instruction that we're doing. So we have all this great data, and now we really can pinpoint what we're using for each small group or each child, or even a reteach of the whole group with different materials. We feel right now that we're able to fully implement our instructional priorities for the year. Like I said, through small group instruction to deliver that differentiated instruction, develop phonemic awareness and phonological awareness skills. It's so exciting to walk into classrooms right now and see the materials that kids have access to in their small groups. And it's just, there's an element of joy in there because of that. We've increased our student discourse through the use of interactive read-alouds, routines for turn and talk, and purposeful play. So, it was like holiday central here for a while with purposeful play, with materials just coming in. And I don't know who was more excited, the teachers or the children or me, but it was really, really great to see that we're able to incorporate the theme with really high quality materials, and purposeful play and instruction are really happening sort of side by side and incorporated into one, and that's really because of the materials that we have. We've heard a lot about professional development. I say this every time I stand in front of all of the teachers in Salem and with our partners. It's an amazing thing to stand in front of 50 or so educators, all there in one room for Salem Public Schools, working towards success for 4-year-olds. So that's really been a game changer for us. And also the use of, we have iPads now that were bought with CPPI money, and we're doing Math Shelf. So our students are exposed to iPads and Math Shelf quite a bit. And that is also really something to see, these little 3- and 4-year-olds that are accessing math curriculum online, and we're starting to see an increase in our math data because of that.
I think we saw that, Secretary, when we were
Yeah, we
here for
did.
a visit
Yeah.
at the community childcare.
All right, Ashley.
You're great with the mic.
Tabitha Williams.
Thanks.
So at Ashley's, we're able to engaging themes for learning that also allows for teacher creativity. And so the teacher that's in the classroom, Brianna, she was able to take my original philosophy of children learn through play and combine it with the 3 cheers, and just has come up with some even more purposeful play activities for the kids to learn. And we're using the My IGDs now, and so she's able to take that information and learn what the kids actually lacked in and provide the activities needed to increase the My IGDs outcome. We can better meet the needs of all the children through combining with the CPPI. With that, we have a parent who was private pay, and now she was able to get the discount for her child. And with that, she was able to give swim lessons, and she was able to attain a pass for museums now, whereas her child was having some difficulties in class. She's able to take her out and put her in these other activities that just made her blossom, and now she's able to do more with interacting with her other peers.
That's so awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tabitha.
Let me get you. Thank you. Super happy to be here and talk about the impact that the CPPI program has had for the Salem YMCA and the Salem community. There's a couple bullet points up there, but I'm just going to focus on 2. One of them is the teacher retention. I think one of the board members that left, she was talking about added seats. I think it's important to remember that sometimes we've had classrooms that are sitting empty with empty seats because we don't have teachers. And that's a real struggle in community-based organizations sometimes, is being able to attract and then retain teachers. The additional money that we're able to provide to our teachers because of this grant has allowed us to have that teacher retention that is so important, that not only increases the quality because of that seniority as they develop the skills, but it also keeps classrooms open. I think the second piece is really that funding that supports the families that are participating in these programs. The quote that Tabitha shared, I get to hear a lot as I pass along these savings to our families. If you think about the income levels that our current subsidies support, and then the amount of money that you'd have to make in a household to support 2 kids in childcare, there's a big gap in there that supposedly we tell families, well, you should be able to afford this, but it really does put families in a position where they have to make hard choices for their kids, and then put them in the positions where when a car breaks down, that really impacts your ability to pay your bills. So the ability for us to pass along these savings to families has made a huge impact. For the preschool families that are in our program, 100% of them are getting some kind of subsidy, whether it's a government subsidy from income eligible slot or voucher slot, YMCA financial assistance, or the CPPI financial assistance. To say that 100% of our families are receiving some kind of assistance means that they're able to use that money to support other parts of their lives, which is so critical when we think about the economic impact of affordable childcare. So, other bullet points up there, our teachers are super happy with the professional development that they're getting, and there's a quote from one of our teachers there.
Great. And Celeste.
Hi. So, yes, we've also been able to retain our teachers throughout this grant. Just like Charity said, being able to offer the educators more money, but through this, it keeps the staff on. So that's been a good incentive. And also, the students have had access to the curriculum. So the shared curriculum has been really great. Having the teachers understand the curriculum and the language, and when they do go to the trainings, they feel a part of, the education and the academic part of it. So that's been great. Teachers have the resources from these from the curriculum, and they have the option to be creative through the activities. And it just like she shared, Ashley, seeing it in the classroom, seeing the teachers, reflect that with the students and offer, those different resources through the activities. We also look at the AD data with the coaches and Shauna, having the teachers being able to speak to them one-on-one about that and helping them and guide them through that has been very helpful with the students and throughout the whole process. And can I see behind? Oh. The professional development, as I said, has been very helpful. The teachers have gained a lot of new skills through the training at the professional development. They're much more confident now when they come back to the classrooms, using the class data, understanding how that works, and using that language in the class. I can hear the language from the staff now, understanding using that the class and the language, and just having that experience of understanding, like making that relationship between the data, using the class and bringing it back into the classroom. The language is used much more often now. I'm getting flustered. One of the things, going back to, I think what's important is that the leadership collaboration, I think, is a missing piece, and is very important. Being able to help the parents and guide the parents. We do get parents that come to us with questions on, well, how do I do this? Where do I go for this? And I think that's a very important piece, and I think it'll be helpful to all of us to be able to implement that when that happens. And the other thing also that I do get feedback from my educators is just being acknowledged and understanding that the educators in early childhood programs are treated very similar to teachers, because they're doing a lot of the same work, now more work and having to do assessments and things like that. So that's some of the feedback I get from my educators, just being treated, equally and understood,
Invested in. And invested in. Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Just in
Thank you, Celeste. Yeah.
Just in thank you very much to our partners. And in closing, I love this picture. This is,
I want to hang out with these three. They look like they're.
I want to find out. Yeah. Whenever you're having a bad day, or the best place to go is to our pre-K classrooms. And there's so much joy. I'm sure on Valentine's Day, even more joy. But I hope you get a sense, a snapshot of the work that we're doing. I don't think we have it all figured out, but I'm really excited about the path that we're on to try to really be a universal and not just access, but quality programming for young people in the city. And we do think we have a model that is working for Salem, and we just have to continue to develop the model. We're very appreciative of the support that we've received. We're very interested to find out what this all means about universal, pre-K and gateway cities and how that plays out. But if we can be a support to other communities on our journey, we may be just a little further ahead, but we know we haven't arrived yet, and we look forward to all the discussion around the state that's going to come around what I think is a missing. I think we all agree can get better across the state of Massachusetts if we're able to better serve families, particularly families of color and traditionally marginalized families who desperately need high quality access and at no cost. I don't think families should have to worry, and too many of our families have to worry, about finding quality care at no cost in their communities that allows them to work. These programs are game changers for young people and their family, not to mention the impact that it's going to have on our schools as we look at performance and achievement as the students come through the grades. So thank you very much, and I don't know how much time you have, but certainly take any questions that might
Thank you
arise.
all for taking the time. And Tabitha, on one of your slides, it says we can better meet the needs of all children, and I think that's ultimately the goal. And I just want to say thank you, because knowing a little bit of this and hearing some of the anxieties about where we are on this, the expansion, you all are naming all those anxieties, right, and trying to work through them. And so just want to thank you for the leadership that each of you are bringing to the conversation from your respective seats, because it is what will make it stronger. And it does feel like something that always needs to live in kind of continuous improvement. And it sounds like you all are doing that through data. And I'm just also just the community of practice that you're building. I see those retention rates on those teachers, and I've got to think that they're really feeling a part of something bigger than what they're doing every day because of what you all are doing. And so thank you. And thank you for your commitment to your own learning on how to continue to do it better. So we'll open it up to the board or for questions or comments.
Just thank you very much. Very impressive.
I have a wondering, so for the districts that may not be at the level that Salem's at, is there any resources through EEC that they, like, so how they can get in touch with them or, you know, work with them to get to that place? Because that was amazing. Your presentation was amazing.
Right, don't we want to share, we want to
Yeah.
to spread the word.
Yeah, for those districts that are, maybe hesitant to apply or
Yeah.
that aren't quite there yet, like, how do they get?
I may ask Jocelyn to
Yeah.
come back and take that question too, because we are trying to think through sort of a technical assistance, and I spoke more about this earlier too, which is like, I think we've been in sort of a flexibility, letting things run, and even hearing a couple things today, I'm thinking about the curriculum piece where we've let people really kind of be loose, and maybe so we are really thinking about a joint technical assistance with DESE too. Sorry, Jocelyn, go ahead.
No. I mean, I think you've really said it, but as we work to get the word out about these opportunities, I think sharing this type of information and the opportunity to bring people together, those that are interested with those that have been doing the work for a while, is going to be a very important part of what we do.
And it seems like folks will be able to sort of, leapfrog maybe some of some of the challenges by standing on your shoulders and the successes you've had.
We have hosted some communities here already. I do know of another gateway city that has been here in the last year to talk with us. And so, whatever we can
Calls
offer.
after today, too.
Again, I will reiterate, it's very different in every city.
Absolutely.
But there are certainly aspects that can be learned.
In other initiatives that we've done sort of like guided practice visits where, maybe 3 or 4 communities come, we have a set agenda, they get to hear maybe some of the folks who are at the table go into the classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
We've had instances where we've released the teachers to then come sit on a panel while so they get to get information from a lot of different places and stakeholders in the work so that they can, because you got to think about this 360. And we would be happy to stage something like that where, there were a couple of panels, people from the classroom, people supporting the classroom, and an opportunity to go into the classrooms.
It will be important for us to play, as we get clearer on the model, having learned from you and your colleagues across the state who are kind of on the journey, to be more, to give you support in doing that. So you're not fielding calls and we're expecting you to do that, but there's some partnership with us where we're providing that technical assistance and maybe delivering some of the experts at times and locations that can not be disruptive to you. So
The other thing I just want to call out that I really appreciate about the governor's budget is that it foresees a steady, ongoing path to entry into this grant. We've, in the past, had a period where we have a set number of districts that are implementing, and then we go to a point where we can have another round of planning grants for another entry point. And the proposition that's out there is to have the opportunity for planning grants this year, but then also build in to the budget planning grants next year to implementation, so that the more the pathway in is regularized, the easier it is to start creating these types of opportunities on a more consistent basis.
I'm curious about a technicality, sorry, in terms of how the funding flows. So the CPPI funds are used to fund the community classrooms, and that I was interested in reading that you are using ESSER funds too for some of your classrooms, but you're using CPPI funds also to enhance your existing district classrooms as well?
So not necessarily. So we use the CPPI funds to support the tuition reimbursements and the the staff boosting to the partners, but not obviously Salem Public School classrooms. And some of the funds were used to purchase materials for CPPI classrooms where we used ESSER for our classrooms. And so we use stipends from CPPI for the partners. We use stipend money from district funds for our classrooms.
I'm thinking those ESSER funds, like, thinking of one of the challenges that you mentioned, is
Yeah.
that, perhaps an opportunity to invite other community partners too into it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you have to have some seed money to get it started, and the ESSER funds provided that boost for us, even though we actually didn't realize the return because of where our enrollment had dropped so much. But that's another story specific to Salem. But it did give us the chance to boost up all our classrooms. Before we even had CPPI, we were using ESSER to help subsidize some of the community partners, and it really was the catalyst that got this all started. Then we leveraged that to then apply for CPPI that gave us additional funds to support the partners, and now we have an infrastructure that we can build from that's a mixed delivery. So it was a blend of using ESSER and CPPI to get us to where we are. And I think ultimately we just want it to be universal. I think we're getting close just because we only serve 60 some odd percent or 50 some odd percent of the students. Not every parent's going to choose one of the choices. They may want to continue to go to their private. I just want to make sure that every parent who wants a free seat, and a full day seat, a full year seat has that. I think that's the other thing I'd stress is I really want to think about full day, full year. That's what families really need. And that's where it's a little disjointed right now. Some of the programs do provide that. That's why the community partners are so important. But almost every family that we talk to needs full year, full day, and also transportation.
Superintendent,
Transportation is a big thing.
when you say full day, full year, can you say what you mean by that?
Yeah, full day is till 5 o'clock minimum. It could be 6 o'clock. Full year is vacations, summer. It's not just the school year schedule. This is what families tell us, and the families that don't need that, the majority of our families of color are low-income families in particular. They need they need all of it, and transportation in Salem is a huge issue, and many families need transportation, and we don't provide transportation. We have enough challenges getting everybody else to school on the yellow buses, but many of the 4-year-old, that's why, again, the community partners are so important because they are in the communities where our families live. They're closer. Many of them provide transportation to our families as well, which is a huge piece of this. So all of those things have to be considered when we're looking at creating a universal. I just don't want any family to be left out around what they need to be able to go to work, to be able to provide a quality childcare for their children.
And those are some of the decisions that families have to make and they think about, or they sometimes forget about too. If they choose a seat in the schools, it's like, okay, well, I might need transportation, or, we have families that have a subsidy, and we were able to offer through the grant, families that didn't qualify for a subsidy, private pay families, so we gave them, we were able to give them a seat in our program through this, through the grant. We had a few private pay families, so.
Yeah. I'd also just point out too, we receive kids every day, especially we're seeing migrant families all the time. They desperately need childcare. I find we run into so many families, they don't even know that we offer programs. We've got to get better at getting the message, and then we have to be more nimble, right? They can come at any time, and how do they know, where can they find a seat? There's got to be a seat for them. And so whether we're reserving seats in the schools, whether community partners, that are free seats, for them and provide them with the care they need. We've got to be nimble, and that is for places like Salem. I think the whole state is seeing, obviously, families arrive at all times. So we have to, that's got to be a consideration in the model as well, is we know families are going to move in at any time. And just like we do in the public schools, we should be ready to receive them and make sure that we can connect them to a seat that can benefit them.
And I think one of the benefits of the mixed delivery system and partnering is, you mentioned the Welcome Center, that
That's
navigation, if you meet
That's
with a family that says, I need transportation, I need till 5:30, you may say, well, the school isn't for you.
That's right.
But
That's right.
Ashley's is.
That's
or
right.
the YMCA.
That's right.
That is power. That to me just makes it if we can ever get to that place, like, that's
That
powerful.
single point of entry.
That's right.
Where there's not someone that's connected to the school district, but like an impartial party that's running that, but can pair
Yeah.
families up with programs that
In
match
the, in
their
the schools
needs.
being open-minded enough, or a provider to say, like, that actually doesn't work for that that family.
Yeah.
Right,
we
and that's
do that
okay.
informally
Yeah, yeah,
now with each other.
yeah.
We're like, ooh, this is probably not going to work for
Yeah.
you, and then we do send them
That's great.
to the partners or vice versa. But it could be much better coordinated and more systemic. I mean, if you come into the city of Salem, you've got to figure out, like, who do I call? I'm calling this one. I'm calling that. It can be very cumbersome and daunting and overwhelming.
I just have a quick, beyond the funding that you mentioned was kind of a boost to this, like, there does seem to be, whether it's through the children's cabinet or the partners here, like, there seems to be a kind of a community focus on this particular topic. Can you guys point to anything that kind of has been driving that? Is it political? Is it because the mayor's involved? Like, just trying to figure out, like, there seems just to be a lot of, like, alignment on this, which is really impressive.
You know what, you want to, I'll just say this. I think a lot of K-12 systems are scared of this space, right? And I'm not sure, like, I would just say school leaders often, like principals, they don't know what to do with 3- and 4-year-olds, right? And I have to say, one of the best things that ever happened to me is when I was a principal in Boston Public Schools, they said, you're taking a K-1 classroom, you're taking and I said, what do you mean this was 20 years ago. And then they made me go through training on what it meant and I was like, I didn't get into the business to work with 3- and 4-year-olds, but I was trained and to do that work. And I think the reason it's working is there's belief in this across the city that this is important, but I also think there's just a willingness of folks who the conversations that were happening, prior to my arrival with the Children's Cabinet, that saw this as a mechanism to improve the educational system. There was so much momentum coming from, I guess, I blame the Lieutenant Governor for some of that. I blame, I blame school leaders who, we have Leanne was a former elementary principal who kept saying to me, my heart is in pre-K, is in early childhood, right? So, we also fortunate to have really strong community partners here who were already engaged with the city. There wasn't, while the relationship isn't perfect, there wasn't an adversarial relationship between these community partners. So I think a lot of it's just the mindset that has existed
Yeah,
over
you can see
time,
it, yeah.
right? To make this happen, and that we're all aligned that this is this is as important as anything we do in the city. If we're going to improve K-12 outcomes in Salem Public Schools, this we see as a huge lever in doing that. Big part of our theory of action is that this matters almost as much as anything else.
That's great. Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just jumping in as the principal of the Early Childhood Center, being involved with the district leadership and Dr. Zweig's principal's cabinet and being brought into everything K through 12 has, for the first time, really put the pre-K doing the work that the rest of the school district is doing. And Manny Cruz mentioned MCAS, not that it's the be-all to end-all, but it's important, and that's what we're all sort of working towards. But we're talking about it here at the Early Childhood Center because I'm talking about it there in the meetings that I'm at. So I think that has really boosted the awareness of the importance of the work happening.
And that was almost a question I had asked earlier. Like, it's a partnership now. We're at the table. We're at it isn't, them and them. It's together. And I think that's where the whole sector is moving, right? And how to embrace that change in a really positive way to improve outcomes and quality for kids. It's great.
I do
Thank
think
you.
there's a spirit of risk-taking, too,
Yeah.
in Salem. That we're kind of a little rebellious and not afraid to jump in. I remember early on, kind of talking to the partners and, everyone was like, oh, a little and then we were like, okay, well, we'll give it a try. What's it going to hurt, right? Let's give it a try. I do think that the Children's Cabinet, after the City Connects piece and then squarely focusing, they situated on early education as a focus area, And, you know, these are people who understand the research around how important those, you know, high quality early education experiences are for children, and sort of galvanize around that, and that just kind of spread. And for us, I think it was a lot of timing too. Like the CPPI grant, we didn't, you know, I'm almost kind of glad we didn't get the early ones, because it forced us to do some hard work before we got the resources that we probably wouldn't have been successful with, because we didn't have the partnerships and the infrastructure. So some of it's like, you know, a spirit of risk-taking, some smart people around the table early on that understand the research, you know, willingness to take some risks, and good timing.
And good leadership.
Well, and one other thing I just say, and this is, maybe this won't be well received by maybe Desi, I don't know, but sometimes, you know, the incentives aren't always there to pay attention to this, because people are really focused on the MCAS grades, right? And I do think there's got to be some, you know, if you want school systems to be, K-12 systems to be focused on this work, it does require a lot of time, energy, and focus that might be diverted from other places. And people have to be okay with that aspect of it, where everybody's hyper-focused on their accountability metrics, which, let's face it, your 4-year-olds don't really have any impact. Well, in the moment they don't, but they will have tremendous impact.
When these guys get to 4th grade.
That's right, exactly right. And so, but people pay attention to what the accountability, you know, the accountability metrics are. And I think that's an important piece, is the messaging that comes from the department too about what people should be paying attention to. I think more people would pay attention to it if they understood the long-term impacts, and that the incentives were there, so that you weren't sanctioned for the fact that as a school system you might put more of your energy, which we did, we have over the last few years on this early childhood space. So thank you.
And I think too, K-12, I mean, we hear K-12, we're a pre-K-12 district. And so I often, we're like, oh, K-12, I'm like, no, pre-K-12.
Right.
Like always like putting that back, just to, because it is somewhat of a forgotten cohort of kids. So we tend to think K-5.
And
K-12.
this is some of the language change we all need to take, right? Like
Yeah.
this is just, we're just domesticated to think a certain way.
Yeah, I mean,
And
we're posting positions now. We're just hiring for a director of, you know, what would have been K-5. It's a pre-K to 5 position, and it's posted as such too. So to Shauna's point, it's like we're not a K-12 system anymore. We're a pre-K-12 system.
I know the board, we have one more quick agenda item. Any other questions for the?
Can I just say just how much I appreciate and am in awe of this story. It is one of the rarest examples of community collaboration, commitment, quality, and just hearing how much, even almost implicit in what you're saying, you're bringing all of the collective assets of early childhood, of parental engagement, of knowing your communities, of teaching and learning, like in one space. I'm sure it's really hard behind the scenes, and it's never always sunny like it sounds to us, but I just want to express my gratitude for providing some optimism and inspiration. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're aiming for whole.
Yeah.
Bottle it up and.
His daughter
Not great.
second grade. Last year, in 6th grade, they were in the 6th.
Welcome, Tyrese Nicholas, who is going to very quickly walk us through.
I guess that works.
What's that?
I guess that works.
Yeah. Sorry, this is a very important but bureaucratic formal notification to the board that we must indulge a couple more minutes just to make sure that we are in compliance with our federal requirements. So Tyrese, as quickly as you can, please tell us what is happening with the state plan.
The pressure is on. So you,
At all.
the pressure, no pressure at all. So usually I get to come before you. So afternoon, Secretary, Board Chair, and our board members, Tyrese Nicholas, Deputy Commissioner for Family Access and Engagement. Usually I get to come before you and speak about very exciting things. Today I'm talking about a bureaucratic administrative thing that we're required to do in compliance with the Federal Office of Child Care as it relates to our Child Care Development Fund and our Child Care Development grant that we receive. So it's a federal and state partnership that funds our subsidies as well as our quality initiatives, improvements, and our workforce initiatives as well. This is what I'm talking to you about is essentially we have a state plan. So part of our state plan process is notifying our stakeholders. Our first stakeholder is you, our board. And the CCDF plan it's our what, our why, and our how that we are in alignment with our federal rule and statute. That's what it is. So our federal statute, it basically governs how we administer our child care financial assistance and our other programs. And we basically have to tell the federal government how we're going to do that. And we do that through the state plan process. The state plan is a 3-year cycle. And so we're in our current cycle. The current cycle ends September 30th, and then we'll have our new plan has to be submitted by July 1 of 2024 with an effective date of October 1. So there are multiple phases. We're in the first phase. And so the first phase is really drafting and informing our stakeholders of the state plan. How it works for us is the state plan really is just us telling them what we're actually doing. So all of EEC strategic objectives will be outlined, and it covers everything from our CCDF administration to our family eligibility, our payment rates, our quality initiatives, what we're doing with our workforce, and also how we seek to improve our programs. So all the things we have. You can see the slides. There are 10 different areas where we'll meet the requirements. I like to say our CCDF plan is really the way that we're able to be monitored, right, and show our compliance and be transparent about how our policies and our practices and our new regulations are in alignment with the feds, and also how we're going to engage with many of our stakeholders to continue to improve our processes and our programs as we administer the Child Care Development Grant. So today's in the first notification. There's a high-level timeline, which includes some other stakeholder engagement, which we plan on doing through our advisory board and through our workforce council. We will also be engaging with other stakeholders as required, which would include families as well as our tribal communities. So that's what I got for you.
Thank you. I'm sure this is a lot of work, but I also think we have a good story to tell right now due to the
We
leadership of all of
do.
you. So I would take that as an opportunity to showcase all of the work that you all have been doing on behalf of the Commonwealth over the last couple of years. So it is a good opportunity to do that as well. I'm sure it's a lot of work, and I'm not questioning that, but hopefully it's a good reflection on everything that's been going on as well.
It will be,
Yeah.
yes. All right, so we'll be
Tyrese,
back
I
before you.
apologize for the short timeline, but we appreciate the update, and there is a tremendous amount of work that's going to go into actually putting the plan together to reflect our work in their template. But you will have the benefit of seeing all that over the next few months as well.
Yeah, and so we'll be back before you in June for your vote.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
All right. With that, we will be in Boston next month. Back in Boston. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. We'll see you next month. Thank you, everyone.